from the south and north. Get the inside scoop on what's going on. Only on I-24 News.
Welcome to our rolling and breaking news coverage on I-24 News. I'm Batch Leventhal. Thanks for joining me. You're currently looking at live images on your screen of the Ichilov Medical Center in Tel Aviv. Hamas released 2 elderly Israeli hostages on Monday evening, identified as Nurik Cooper and Yocheved Lifshitz, after 17 days in captivity. The families will soon be addressing the media from the Ichilov hospital, where they were taken for examination and further health checks. And as soon as they do start addressing the media, we'll take you there live for those presses. In the meantime, it is day 18 of war here in Israel. Rocket fire from the Gaza Strip has been renewed early this morning as Hamas launched a barrage at Israeli communities in the south and along the border, which continued well into the morning. This following the release of 2 additional hostages from Gaza late yesterday evening as part of Hamas's psychological warfare. On the northern border, the IDF also destroyed Hezbollah terror infrastructure in overnight strikes. In a recent address to the public, IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari told the nation to be prepared for long weeks of fighting ahead. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, French President Emmanuel Macron has landed in Tel Aviv for a one-day solidarity visit, meeting with families of French victims and the Israeli leadership. He is currently meeting on a one-on-one meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after he met with his French counterpart a little earlier. I want to go now in studio to Avi Pazner, the former Israeli ambassador to France and Italy and the former world chairman of Keren Hayesod United Israel Appeal. Avi, stay with us because we do see that Gamzu is speaking at the moment. Again, I'll remind our viewers that's Rani Gamzu, is the head of the Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv. Let's take a listen.
Here, with the first goal of having a medical assessment and find their medical situation and give them all the support. And create a situation in which medically they can see their families, who are obviously very excited, and also that we ensure that their medical condition is strong. This is what we did throughout the night, with a lot of medical care and further examinations. It is possible that in the next couple of days that at least one of the kidnapped will be released to her home and the other will continue medical examination and treatments. We make sure all the time, we examine all the time their mental state and their physical state, and are here to assist with everything that is needed. All of this together with the connection to the families. What we care about right now is let them pass these first few days in the best possible manner and to attend to the medical conditions. Obviously, at a very old age, we check everything that is needed as part of the greater treatment to all the patients in the hospital. I will give the floor to the kidnapped, Yocheved Lifshitz.
Leonid. יותר קרוב, ליאוניד. יותר קרוב למצלמות, בבקשה. צמוד. יוכבד, את יכולה להתחיל.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yocheved Lifshitz, born in 1938. Born here in Israel. I thank you for coming to hear about the tragedy of myself and my friends. We hope to pass through this period. I will repeat what she says. She will speak to me. My mother said she thanks you for coming here today. She was born here in Israel in 1938. Take your time. I've been through hell. We never thought we'll reach such a state. They went berserk in our kibbutz, put me on a motorcycle on the side and drove through the fields. They blew up the fence, the electronic fence that was built for $2.5 billion. It did not to no avail. Masses stormed our homes, hit people, they kidnapped many. They did not care about kidnapping elderly and children. It was extremely painful. They brought us to the entrance. When I laid on the motorcycle, I was on the side. And on the way, they beat me. They didn't break my limbs, but it was extremely painful for me. I will repeat what she said.
We're not taking questions at this point. Okay. My mom is telling the horrific stories. She's saying that many people, a swarm of people, came through the fence. That the fence cost 2.5 billion shekels, and it didn't help even a little bit. My mom is saying that she was taken on the back of a motorbike with her body, with her legs on one side and her head on another side, that she was taken through the plowed fields with a man in front on one side and a man behind her, and that while she was being taken, she was hit by sticks by Shabab. Yeah, Shabab people. Until they reached the tunnels. There they walked for a few kilometers on the wet ground. There are a huge network of tunnels underneath. It looks like a spider web. I will repeat it in Hebrew. אמא אומרת
Mom says she was taken on the back of a motorcycle. One man was sitting in front of her and another one behind her, her legs to the side. She said they drove through the plowed fields, and as they drove, she was beaten with sticks to her back. They took out
the watch and the jewelry as she was driving.
היית שם שבועיים שלמים, אפילו יותר, 17 יום.
רגע, לא. אם את תספר את הסיפור, אין שאלות. אוקיי, תמשיכי.
Carry on. When we got there, they told us that they believe in the Quran and they will do us no harm and give us the same conditions that they have.
When my mom...
כן, אנחנו שומעים אתכם, היא מנסה לדבר, וזה ממש קשה, אנחנו מנסים
תמשיכי לספר את עכשיו.
Continue your story. We started walking through the tunnels with a wet ground with extreme humidity. We reached a big hall where some 25 kidnapped were concentrated. After 2 or 3 hours, they separated from my kibbutz, 5 people of Nir, and they put them in a separate room. Their guards were next to us with a paramedic and a doctor. Carry on. We laid there on mattresses. They took care of the sanitary situation. The doctor came every 2 or 3 days to check on us. A paramedic was there as well and provided some medicine. There was a guy that was carried by the motorbike. He was wounded very badly in his hands and his legs. It was very difficult to see him. He is in a better condition now. The doctor prescribed some sort of antibiotics. His condition started improving.
כמה אנשים הייתם שם?
כמה אנשים?
אנחנו היינו 5.
We were 5.
לכל אחד היה מישהו ששמר עליו.
And each had a guard that was in charge of us. There were a lot of women there. They took care of having the women hygiene. They cleaned us up for disease. They feared that they themselves will be contaminated by infections. I do not wish to to speak about politics. They spoke about all sorts of things. They were friendly in their way.
Okay. My mom is telling about coming through the tunnels. לא יהיה מושלם. המצב לא מושלם.
Perfect
My
situation.
mom is talking about coming there. When they arrived into a large hall in which about 25 hostages were gathered. And after 2 or 3 hours, those hostages, 5 of them, she among them, were taken into a separate room. My mom is saying that they were very friendly towards them and that they took care of them, that they were given the medicine. That they were given medicine and they were treated. One of the men with them had a badly injured from a motorbike accident on the way, and the paramedic was looking after his wounds. He was given medicine and antibiotics. That the people were friendly, that they kept the place very clean. They were very concerned about them.
הבאנו מיקרופון, ותודה יושבת, עכשיו תחזיקי את זה. בטח כולם ישמעו אותך. בבקשה, בוא תכניס את זה לפה. שנייה, בוא נשים את זה פה שישמעו. כולם עכשיו, בבקשה צעד אחורה כולם. כולם, חוץ משרון, אני בבקשה, כולם, בבקשה להתרחק. בואו ניתן ספייס, כולם ספייס, לצאת אחורה. אם את תנסי לדברי על זה. אחד, שומעים.
כדי להגביר
אני מבקש לכולם לקום, לצאת אחורה.
Ask everyone to move back.
כולם, בבקשה, לצאת אחורה, הבאנו מיקרופון, נעשה את זה מסודר.
Please move back. Let's do this in an ordinary manner. Orderly.
בואי תראי איך את מדברת עם זה.
הדברים האחרונים שהיא מדברת, את לא יכולה לדבר פה, חמודה.
דנה, בבקשה, לא להפריע. אנחנו בשידור, אני מבקש כולם שקט, היא תדבר במיקרופון.
אם את תדברי לנו.
Mother, speak to the microphone.
עוד נשימה, ניתן להם קצת מה שרציתי. תספרי קצת על מה שקורה שם, על החברים.
Speak to us about what is happening. They divided us into groups, and according to kibbutzes,
תושבים שבאו להתארח ודאגו לכל הצרכים. זה יאמר לזכותם, היו מאוד אדיבים. ושמעו שאנחנו נהיה נקיים, שאנחנו נאכל. אכלנו את אותו
sure that we eat the same food that they eat.
עם גבינה לבנה, גבינה מותחת ומלפפון.
White cheese and cucumbers.
זה היה ארוחה ליום שלם.
That was a meal for a whole day.
My mom is talking about the conditions and being.
Sharon, the microphone.
Okay. My mom is speaking about the time there. She's telling us about sharing food with the people, that the people, when she first arrived, when they told them that they are Muslims and they're not going to hurt them, and that they ate the same food that the Hamas was eating. My mom feels that it's quite enough at the moment. It's wonderful. My mom is very much hoping that all the people that were with her will come back, and the story is not over till everybody comes back and we can start building again something. Yeah. את רוצה להגיד משהו?
כן, המסר האחרון,
last message.
חוסר הידיעה בצה"ל בשבת מאוד פגע בנו.
We were very hurt by the fact that the IDF did not know where are the scapegoats.
הם הזהירו אותנו 3 שבועות לפני שעשו לנו בית ספר.
Warned us 3 weeks prior.
המונים מגיעים לכביש ושרפו לנו שדות.
People who came to the road and burned fields, sent incendiary balloons to burn our fields. And the IDF did not address this seriously. Suddenly, on Saturday morning, when everything was quiet, there was a heavy bombardment of the communities. And with that, the masses infiltrated, blew up the expensive fence, opened the gates of the kibbutz and entered in their masses. It was extremely difficult. I keep having those images in my mind.
רגע, רק שנייה, סליחה, לא לעשות מיליון שאלות.
שואל אותה פה עיתונאי על לחיצת היד של הפצע. הוא שואל מדוע לחצת את היד לאותו מחבל חמאס ברגע שהוא...
He's asking, why did you shake the hand of the Hamas terrorist in the visual? They were gentle with us. Our needs were supplied.
אמא שלי אומרת שהם התייחסו אליהם בעדינות וסיפקו את כל הצרכים שלהם. My mom is saying that they treat them kindly and provided for them.
הם נראו מוכנים לזה, הם הכינו את זה
this. They were prepared for a very long time, including the needs of the women. We will not take questions. They said once that Israel announced that there are 900 people killed, but they have 1,000, if not more. Thank you all. I do not. I only know about the group that was with me in the room. We will stay here and we will answer questions. Thank you, Yocheved.
Yes, give us 1 minute and we would answer questions.
We were just watching a live presser from the Ichilov hospital in Tel Aviv. Earlier we heard Ronnie Gamzu, the director of the hospital, speaking, and we've just now heard from one of the 2 elderly hostages, Yocheved Lifshitz, who was released after 17 days in captivity. And still with me in the studio is Avi Pazner. Avi, I'm almost at a loss for words myself. This is a frail and fragile woman who doesn't look like she belongs in the IDF, who doesn't look like a militant herself, a soldier, troops. It's almost unfathomable as to how she was taken and how the rest of the world is almost justifying the fact that Hamas had a right to do that. But something that I picked up with regards to the interview, perhaps you did too and others did, is the fact that she described the fact that on the way down into Gaza and into the tunnel network, which she has now said out of her own words that there is this vast tunnel network underground, that she was hit by Hamas terrorists, and yet when she was underground, they treated her nicely. I don't want to be the one to speculate, but the question does have to be asked. Is there a possibility that other hostages' lives could be at stake based on what she was saying to the press? Because from the atrocities and the brutality that we've heard from Hamas, treating them nicely just doesn't quite add up.
You know, Batya, I was quite shattered when she told how she was abducted. She's 85 years old, okay, on a motorbike with somebody beating her all the way to Gaza. I mean, what wrong did she do? Why was she beaten? And I think, I don't want to say, but if this is what they did to an elderly lady, what do they do to younger women? Or to children?
To toddlers.
To toddlers. They have 2 years old, 3 years old. I mean, it's incredible that an organization should take that kind of people as hostages. If they were a soldier, I don't want to say that I can understand, but there is a rationale to it. But this lady, what has she done? Why? I mean, it's incredible. And now, Batya, to know that there are still more than 220 there. We don't know the exact number, but more than 220. In which condition they are held? What do they need? Now, what we have discovered through what she said, that they are hidden in the tunnels. They are also in the tunnels.
But some of them, and again, I don't want to speculate, but she mentioned that some were separated. Could this be, and I tread lightly saying this, but could this perhaps have been a control group of people that were treated relatively nicely, given food, given medical supplies, that were different to the rest of the groups for the purpose of knowing that some of these elderly, possibly even children, American citizens would be released and then wouldn't really have anything negative to say about their captors?
Certainly, it's a possibility because Hamas, I think, planned that well ahead, and they have such a number of hostages that they knew they would release some of them, like they did. 4 were released, okay? Women were released. So it's very possible that they are treated in a certain way and that younger people are treated in completely another way, let alone soldiers. So it's perfectly possible. And you know, and you said a word which really sent shivers through my back. They were separated. You remember in World War II that Jews were somehow separated from their families? Selektia, the selected for death or for life? You know, did something similar happen there? At least as far as the treatment is concerned, or the conditions in which they are held. It's a terrible situation, but terrible situation.
I want to point something out. Someone asked her a question that our guy Azriel translated about why those viral images of her shaking the hand of the terrorist, her captor. And I want to just remind our viewers something as well, perhaps that needs always worth mentioning. Her grandson, Daniel Lifshitz, has been on the channel a few times. We've spoken to him prior, obviously, to his grandmother, Yocheved, being released from captivity. And he's spoken extensively about the fact that his grandparents are peace activists, that his grandfather often fetches or picks up sick children in the Gaza Strip from the Erez crossing and drives them to hospitals in Tel Aviv, like the Sylvan Adams Hospital, for these children to get medical care. How is this not the story that is being, apart from them being innocent civilians, elderly ladies, these are peace activists that are standing on the side of the Palestinians.
Yes.
When people say that they support the Palestinians, do you understand what it is that you're saying?
And this is their reward of being peace activists, that they are being taken hostages, and she is released, but her husband is not released. The one that you say take children from Gaza to the hospital, he is still in the Hamas jail. For the Hamas, there is no difference, Batya. Being a peace activist or being a right-winger, you are an Israeli. You are a Jew. This is what is important for the Hamas. Nothing else. Not what you do, not what your ideas are, not what your politics is. Do you love Palestine? It doesn't. You are a Jew, so you are subjected to that kind of treatment. I'm happy she came out alive because, at that age you are so fragile. I can imagine how she felt. I'm happy for her. And I hope that her husband also will make it. Her husband is elder than she is. I hope that he also will make it. But look at the inhumanity of the Hamas. To release her and to keep her husband. I mean, this is also a punishment.
Avi, stay with us, but the daughter of Mrs. Lifshitz is now giving questions and answers to the media, so we're going to dip into that live now.
Whose parents and children are still in Gaza. They are our top priority. My mother is here to tell her story, so that you could tell the world and remind that we want them back home.
I'm going to say it in English.
Yes, please.
My mom is back. My mom is back from Gaza. She's a wonderful woman, and we are so delighted to have her. She is a ray of light in our life, in a big darkness. This is wonderful. But our hearts is with the over 200 hostages still there. We are heartened to hear that they are well looked after. We do not know that that is everyone, because there's many that my mom did not meet. Our heart is with our friends and brothers and mothers and sisters that are still waiting, like us, to our dad and to their children. Please go ahead and tell the story and bring them back home.
Your mother, did she tell you how many hostages did she met?
My mom said that she was with about 25 hostages.
Did your mothers believe that
I will translate it. אמא שלי אמרה שהיו איתה בערך 25 שבויים אחרים.
It's possible that out of this nightmare there may be some peace.
I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not going to speak about that now. I think that my mom is a human being that loves humanity.
What did you say when you said shalom? Can you tell us a little bit more about how your mother was treated?
My mom said that she was treated well and that the people were kind to her. We do not know what is the story of the 175 or so other prisoners. We cannot deduct from it that they too are in a good condition.
What about your mother?
What did you feel?
Can you tell me how they kidnapped her?
They only have one brain. My mom, אמא שלי אמרה שהתייחסו אליהם טוב, היא אמרה שטיפלו בהם וזה החוויה שלה.
That was her experience. We do not know what has happened to 175 other people that she hadn't met, because she was in a group of 25 people.
Your father is still being held. Can you tell me what your hopes are for him?
Our hopes from our father and for all the hostages is that they will come home safely. אנחנו כולנו רוצים שאבא שלי,
My father and all the other kidnapped to return home safely.
My mom and my dad were separated at the very beginning, and so we do not know from my mom's story what happened to my dad. We do know that he was injured.
Do you believe he's still alive? Do you believe that?
I do not speculate. I do not speculate.
It's not a private, it's not a private. I've got one question, nobody's asked. היו שם ילדים איתה שם?
היו שם ילדים איתה.
There were children with her. There are children that she saw. She did not address the treatment of any other person. From the moment she was taken home until she got there, she was not treated well. She was beaten. They were in a humid place and they were laying on mattresses. She said that they were informed about the number of Israelis killed. She speaks openly about she separates between two stories. One is being inside the kibbutz and being kidnapped. My father was injured. And a separate story on how she was carried like a bag of potatoes to where she was captured. Over there, she was treated by a doctor. Is this psychological warfare? I don't think that is the word. What they did was planned. They took whatever they want. No one threatened. Once they were in captivity, she was treated well. The first part was extremely brutal and cruel. She shook the hand of the doctor who took care of her. That happened to many other prisoners in the past. It's got nothing to do with what she's been through. She hopes that the rest of the kidnapped will be released. We all need to continue to work on that, to pressure, do everything that is possible. There are children, babies, and people whose condition is not good. It's not in a good condition, and we really hope that everything will be done in order to bring back all the other kidnapped. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
That was the Lifshitz family, the mother, I believe the daughter pardoned the son and the grandson, addressing the media on her behalf, giving some questions. And I'd like to now cross to Kibbutz Kamim in southern Israel, where I'm joined by Yocheved Lifshitz. Lishai, you were able to escape from Kibbutz Nachal Oz with your kids, which was one of the most badly hit by Hamas terrorist infiltrations. And in that total devastation, your husband, Omri, was abducted by Hamas into the Gaza Strip. I'm not going to ask how you're feeling because I don't think words can articulately even describe the pain that you must all be going through, but I am hoping that you can share with us a little about your story that unfolded over hours some 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I start for the morning. At 6 o'clock in the morning, they start to fall in missiles. We have our alert, Tzeva Adom. It's our alert in our area. In the start, we usually know this situation. I live in this area from more than 20 years, and more than 20 years, every month, we have the masters, and we know we usually to this, So we go to our safe room, and me, Omri, my husband, my man, and my little girl, Alma, my little daughter that 6 months old. Ronnie, it's her bedroom. This is the safe room. It sleep every night, and so she was over there also. And after 1 hour that we were there, we start to understand that it's not the regular scenario. It's something else. It's something really big. We start to see message in the WhatsApp, in a group of WhatsApp, that there is a terrorist, there is a mechablim in the kibbutz, in this house, and many people start to write, help us, and all this stuff. And we understand that it's not a normal situation. It's not the regular situation. At 10 o'clock, something like this, the mechablim broke to our house from the window in our bed. And we heard, the guns. We heard they speak with us in Arabic and English, and knock on our door, the door of the safe room, with their weapons. And we were in silence. We try to be in silence and hope that they leave us. They think that we don't over there or something like this. But after 2 minutes, there is a boy. His name Tomer Eliaz. Unfortunately, he's murdered. He was murdered after this. But in this situation, he speak with us. He tell us, it's Tomer, and please open the door, because if you don't open the door, they're going to shoot me and shoot you. So open the door, and everything's going to be okay. We understand that we don't have choice. We need to open the door, because if not, they start shooting, and maybe if we open the door, everything is going to be okay. So we open the door, and we go to our kitchen. In this moment, we go Omri, Alma, and me. And Ronnie, my little daughter Ronnie, that she is 2 years old, she's staying in the mamad. We begging that they give us to take care with us, and they didn't give me to go to do it. And after a few minutes, they told Tomer, ask him to do it, and they give him to take my daughter and give us her. They start trashing our house and search for a weapon. They was sure that we have a weapon in our house. And when they understand that there is no weapon, they told us to go with them to another house, to Mishpachat Idan house. When we get to Mishpachat Idan house, they are our neighbors. We found the mother, Gali Idan, and 2 children, Yael and Shachar, and the father, Tzachi, sit on their kitchen on the floor. And we understand that the oldest children, 18 years old, Mayan, was murdered in the safe room. We sit and go over there for 2 hours, something like this. All this time they film us in Gali phone on the Facebook. We was on live on Facebook all this time. And they told us that everything's gonna be okay. Just sit in quiet and don't speak, and they don't want and then they don't want us. They don't want to do anything to us. They want the soldiers, and if we just sitting in quiet and don't do anything, everything going to be okay.
Yeah.
In 1:20 p.m., something like this, Yehudit and Natalie, that we live in Saturday, I think, came also. They came with the Mechablim, the terrorists, to this house also. And after 10 minutes that they came, they start to organize everything, all the weapons. And in 1:30, in 1:30, they told my Omri, Tzachi, the father of the other family, Tzachi Dan, and Yehudit and Natalie to get up. They put, I'm sorry, I forget how to say it, but they put on their hands, they take them like this. And in this moment, I just say to my Omri, in silence, that I love him, that I will care to our daughter, and we're waiting for him, and don't be a hero. And this is my last word that I told him. After 1 minute, he go, and we don't know anything. After this, my little children, Ronnie, 2 years old, this is the first time that she started to yell, and she wants to go with him. She yell, I want my daddy, and she really wants to go after him. I have to take him in first and hold her, because she wants to go with him. She fallen asleep after this, and when she wake up after 20 minutes, she was not 2 years anymore. She's not a regular 2 years children girl. She's something else. She's like 4 now. And we're waiting over there, the two family, me, Gali, and the children's, my 2 daughters and her 2 children's, for another 4 hours until 5:30. When everything around us started to burn, we heard all this time shooting and yelling and screaming in Arabic. So we just sit and pray that they didn't come back to us.
Lishai, I cannot even begin to fathom how you all went through this ordeal and survived and are continuing to share your story, although your dear husband is taken hostage by Hamas into the Gaza Strip. And I want to thank you so very much for being so brave.
I just want to say one sentence, really one. Now it's something that we all the time we talk about it, but it's not something that's going to finish in this week or after 2 weeks. It's something that we know that it's going to take a lot of time. And we need all the world with us. We need all the world that understand it's not a regular war. It's like a Holocaust. It's something really, really big, and we need all the world understand this, and all the world stand with us and scream with us that all the hostages, the children, the women, the husband, the soldier, all of them need to come back home. We need to bring them home, and we need all the world with us.
That's why I want to thank you so much for your bravery, and I'm hoping that we've given you a platform and an audience to hear your story, and so that the world can stand with you, stand with the Jews, can stand with Israel in solidarity, and demand that the hostages be brought back to Israel safely. We're praying for it. I know many around the world are, and I just want to tell you to stay strong, and hopefully you will see the return of your wonderful husband soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Still with me in studio is Avi Pazner, the former Israeli ambassador to France and Italy and the former world chairman of the Keren Hayasod United Israel Appeal. And now joining us as well from Nes Ziona in central Israel is Professor Kobi Michael, senior research fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies and the former deputy director general of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs. Gentlemen, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is sitting in a meeting with the French President Emmanuel Macron, who is here on a solidarity visit. We are currently looking at live visuals of the podium at the Prime Minister's office, where the two will deliver a statement. And as soon as that statement begins, we will be bringing it to our audience live. Kobi, I'd like to ask you in the meantime, because there's so many moving parts to what is unfolded in Israel right now, between the politics, the economics, the social, the psychological, the military. It almost feels, perhaps the wrong word, given the fact that one of the hostages just recently referred to it, but a spider web of so many moving parts. How do we break through this noise and make sense of what's now to come? We still have, yes, these hostages have been released, but I'll remind our viewers, their husbands are still in captivity in Gaza, potentially all underground, separated, as Avi Pazner pointed out, very similar to the Holocaust, this idea of selection and moving women, children, certain people from certain kibbutzim into the same areas. How do we make sense of all of this in terms of what is about to happen militarily, what's happening diplomatically, and also from the social aspect?
This is almost the $1 million question. This is a very complicated situation, and we are at war, and the Israeli public must understand that we are at war. This is not another operation which is similar to the other operations that we used to know in the Gaza Strip since December 2008. And war is something which is very cruel, and there are many uncertainties in war. This is the basic nature of war. Secondly, this is the time of moral clarity, not only among the Israeli public, but in the entire international community. And unfortunately, there is no moral clarity, or there is not enough moral clarity, because if there was enough moral clarity, I think that the international community would have behaved differently. First of all, with regard to the hostages, all the idea of the immoral principle of selection. Secondly, the idea of Qatar, okay? Qatar is an enemy and should be declared as an enemy. Enemy of Israel, enemy of the United States, enemy of the civilized world, because Hamas is the biggest provider and supporter, Qatar is the biggest provider and supporter of Hamas. Qatar hosts on its soil the heads of the snake, Ismail Haniyeh and Khaled Mashal, who from the Qatarian soil call all the Arab and the Muslims in the world to go out to the streets and to slaughter Jews. Okay, Hamas, Qatar operates Al Jazeera, the most dangerous inciting media in the world, and Qatar should have got an ultimatum from the Americans. You have 24 hours to throw out all Hamas terrorists from your soil, to stop immediately any kind of support in Hamas, and to shut down Al Jazeera. And instead of that, the Americans and the Europeans are using Qatar as a mediator here with Hamas, where there are some Israelis who support it. And I think that this is a mistake. This is a moral mistake. This is a strategic mistake. This is the time, as I said, of moral clarity. You are with us or against us. There is no anymore sitting on the fence, a feet here and a feet there. And we have to have a lot of determination, a lot of patience, and we have to understand that we are in front of a long journey. This is not going to be a piece of cake, not a 6-day war. This is going to be a long war.
Kobe, I apologize for cutting you off, but we are getting live visuals now of both the French President, President Macron, and Bibi Netanyahu. Let's take a listen.
Your support, that of your delegation, is highly appreciated. On October 7th, Hamas waged war on Israel. It was the worst terrorist attack the world has known since 9/11. But for Israel, proportionately, it was like 20 9/11s. It was the worst act of anti-Semitic violence since the Holocaust. I described to you some of the horrors. It's impossible to describe all of them. But like Anne Frank, Jewish children hid in attics from these monsters, and they were found and butchered. As in Babi Yar, Jews were machine-gunned in killing pits. Hamas butchered, Hamas beheaded, Hamas burned babies alive, Hamas raped, Hamas kidnapped hostages, over 200, babies, children, elderly, Holocaust survivors. We are in a war between barbarism and civilization. Chancellor Scholz, who visited Israel, said that Hamas are the new Nazis. And as in the Second World War, when the Allies fully supported the French anti-Nazi resistance, today the international community is uniting in support of Israel. For Hamas, barbarism not only threatens the Jews, it threatens the Middle East, it threatens the region, it threatens Europe, it threatens the world. Hamas is the test case of civilization against barbarism. And Mr. President, you and the French people have known the horror of terrorism. You experienced it in Nice and Lyon, in Paris. You refuse to tolerate this threat. And the people of Israel refuse to have ISIS in a terror enclave on its border. I have to explain. This is not an enclave of ISIS thousands of kilometers away from Europe. It's ISIS in the suburbs of Paris. It's ISIS, you can drive 20 minutes and you reach the suburbs of Paris and you have ISIS there. We cannot live like that. Nobody can live like that. So we are doing everything we need to do to destroy Hamas in Gaza. We will dismantle its terror machine. We will dismantle its political structure. We will make every effort to release our hostages, and we'll make every effort to keep Palestinian civilians out of harm's way. It's important to understand Hamas is committing a double war crime. It's not only murdering our civilians, targeting our civilians, doing unspeakable war crimes. They're also hiding behind civilians, their own civilians. We asked the people of Gaza to leave, to go to a safe zone in the south where we're enabling humanitarian aid to reach them. Hamas is putting checkpoints with people with guns to prevent Palestinians from leaving the war zone. Hamas is responsible for civilian casualties, but we will do every effort to avoid them and to fight this war as speedily and as rapidly as we can, but it could be a long war. When this is over, the people of Israel will rebuild their communities, and the people of Gaza will no longer live under Hamas tyranny. But first, there's one condition for anything that could happen and the good things that could happen once this war is over. And that condition is that Hamas must be destroyed. And I thank you, Emmanuel, for coming here to Israel, for standing with Israel, for standing with us in Israel and expressing your support. We rely on your continued support as this important battle for our future, our common future, proceeds till victory. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, dear Bibi. Thank you for your words. And I want to thank you for the discussion we had together in tete-a-tete and with our delegation. And I'm here to express our support, our solidarity, and our support for today, tomorrow, in all the different fields of this battle against terrorism. If you allow me, I will say a few words in French. I don't know if there is a translation, but I will make sure that you understand. Monsieur le Premier ministre, je suis venu en effet ici exprimer au peuple israélien toutes les condoléances de la France.
I came here to
Ces condoléances
speak
sont celles
about
d'un pays
the condolences of France.
éploré devant l'acte terroriste le plus terrible de votre
We are terrified what happened to us, to you.
Ces condoléances sont celles d'une nation.
Those condolences are from a nation
Jeune vie, des vies ordinaires.
that also had suffered, and we know what happened to you, and we are with you.
Ces condoléances sont celles de millions de femmes et d'hommes, nos compatriotes.
The condolences are from millions and millions of French people
de violence pure,
that were shattered by the violence and the cruelty that happened to you.
Les actes que vous avez subis dépassent tout entendement.
We don't understand how you could
Comme toutes les victimes
overcome what the terrible acts of barbarism that you have suffered.
la haine pure.
This was raw hatred.
Vous étiez avec nous, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
When we were hit by terrorism,
Les rues de Paris,
you were with us and you marched with us in the streets of Paris when we had terrorism.
vous apporte aujourd'hui
And
l'émotion.
today I come and give you the support of the French
Nos deux
people.
pays sont liés par le même deuil.
Our two countries are united in the same.
Par le Hamas. Et c'est pour mon pays l'attaque terroriste la plus meurtrière subie depuis 2016.
This is the most horrendous terrorist act.
Nous partageons aussi avec Israël une terrible épreuve, celle des otages.
And we also know what it is to have hostages taken.
9 Français le sont.
We have 9 French within the hostages.
Jusqu'à présent. Et vous savez, nous savons combien est insupportable pour un pays d'imaginer la captivité de ces
And we are not ready to take that, and we will do whatever we do to liberate them.
J'ai voulu partager leur détresse,
I met
leur
the
redire le plein
families.
soutien de la France,
I wanted to express my solidarity and
la
our
sécurité de nos compatriotes
support
à vos côtés.
for them.
Nous employons avec Israël et d'autres partenaires à obtenir la libération de tous les otages.
We want all the hostages to be liberated,
Être libérés.
all of them.
C'est pour la France une
Completely.
priorité.
This is a
Pour
priority
cela, nous
for
devons
France.
tout faire pour obtenir du Hamas la libération de tous sans complaisance.
We
Je veux ici
all have to be liberated
nous aide à
without
conduire ces discussions.
any differences.
Je suis aussi venu vous dire la solidarité de la France dans la lutte contre notre ennemi commun, le terrorisme.
And I come to tell you the solidarity of France against
Se
terrorism.
défendre face
Israel has the right to defend
aux
itself.
destructions. Cette cause est juste.
This is a just cause you have.
Le Hamas est un groupe terroriste
Hamas
dont
is a
l'objectif
terrorist
même
group
est la destruction de l'État d'Israël.
that aims to destroy
De
Israel.
Daesh, d'Al-Qaïda, de ceux qui leur sont
Hamas
associés
is like Daesh
dans
and
l'action
Al-Qaeda.
et dans l'intention.
They operate
La
in the
priorité,
same way.
votre priorité, mais aussi celle de toutes les démocraties et de la France, est avec vous.
The priority of you and of France and all,
Nous
of
qui
all
avons été
democracy
frappés si durement
is
par
to
ces mêmes
fight
groupes.
these
Je vais vous dire
organizations.
une chose simple. Vous n'êtes pas seul.
You are not alone. I came to
Pourquoi
tell
la
you you
France
are
est
not
prête
alone.
à ce que la coalition internationale contre Daesh, dans le cadre de laquelle nous sommes engagés,
We are ready that the international coalition against Daesh in Syria and Iraq will also fight
propose à nos
against
partenaires
Hamas.
internationaux, je l'ai évoqué avec vous ce matin, que nous puissions bâtir une coalition régionale et
We
internationale
want to build a coalition, regional, international,
tous.
to fight
Je
terrorism.
pense que c'est l'intérêt d'Israël, de sa sécurité,
It's
celle
in
aussi
Israel's
de nos
interest.
voisins, menacés par ces mêmes groupes. ou des
And we are also threatened by these groups.
La lutte doit être sans merci,
The struggle does have without
car nous
pity.
sommes des démocraties qui luttons
We are
contre des terroristes.
democracies and we hate
Des
terrorism.
démocraties donc qui respectent le droit de la guerre et
But
assurent
we have to work within the rules of law
des
of war.
démocraties qui ne prennent pas pour cible les civils, ni à Gaza, ni nulle part.
We will not target
Le respect des
civilians,
populations
not at
impose,
Gaza, not
en
anywhere else.
l'occurrence, de permettre l'accès de l'aide de rétablir, et nous en avons longuement parlé,
we should have humanitarian help
l'électricité pour les
reach
hôpitaux,
the
les
Gaza.
malades et les blessés, sans
We have to have electricity in the hospitals of Gaza.
Nous allons bâtir des coopérations très concrètes sur ce sujet.
And we will cooperate with you
Nous
on
sommes
that.
prêts à apporter une aide concrète à toutes les populations.
We are ready to help all populations.
Ces dernières années, ces derniers mois, mais avec des solutions très pratiques et concrètes que nous avons discutées durant cet entretien.
We talked about this in our
principaux voisins
meeting,
pour bâtir ces
and
solutions.
we will speak also with your neighbors.
Nous devons aussi la conduire en veillant à éviter l'embrasement de toute la région.
We want to avoid
Je mets ici en
a
garde le
regional
Hezbollah,
war.
le régime iranien, les Houthis au
I
Yémen,
warn Hezbollah, I warn Iran,
dans
I
la région
warn the
menacent
Houthi.
Israël, de ne pas prendre le risque inconsidéré
Take the risk.
au front.
Don't take the risk
Ce
to
serait
attack
ouvrir la
Israel.
porte à une conflagration régionale
If
dont
you
chacun sortirait
if
perdant.
you will do so, there will be a regional confrontation, and you will
peuples de la
suffer from that.
Faisons tout pour ne pas ajouter des larmes aux larmes. Et
We have to do everything to avoid more tears.
plus près d'ici, je souhaite aussi appeler l'attention de chacun sur les actes de quelques-uns à l'égard de civils palestiniens dont la violence menace
I
de
want
propager le feu à la
also
Cisjordanie aussi.
I want also to draw your attention to act
ne peut
against
être durable
civilian Palestinians.
sans une relance décisive du processus politique.
We have to renew the political process for peace.
Le Hamas, je l'ai rappelé, est un groupe terroriste.
Hamas is a terrorist group.
Pourquoi il ne porte pas la cause palestinienne?
He doesn't represent the Palestinian people.
Force. Et la
We
cause
have to fight
palestinienne,
against him.
doit être entendue.
Raison. But the Palestinian cause has to be heard.
Le retour à la normalisation qui s'annonçait.
We have to go back to the normalization
si la réponse
which we were
d'Israël à la
thinking
violence
about.
est évidemment sécuritaire et implacable face aux groupes terroristes.
Israel has the right to defend itself.
En acceptant le droit légitime des Palestiniens
But Israel
à
also
disposer
has to
d'un territoire et
accept
d'un État
the legitimate right of the Palestinian people to have their own territory and live in peace with Israel.
L'existence et la sécurité d'Israël comme une condition première.
And the security of Israel has to be maintained.
La lutte commune contre le terrorisme, le respect du droit humanitaire, l'ouverture d'un horizon politique.
We have to open a political horizon. We have to see that Israel is safe.
Et maintenant, en nous battant face au terrorisme,
we have to fight terrorism, but we have to
encore une
keep
fois, Monsieur le
hope
Premier
alive.
ministre, merci de votre accueil.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Merci pour votre temps.
Thank you for your
Cet
time.
engagement face au terrorisme.
And thank you
Et
for
dans les
your
prochaines heures, nous
fight
continuerons
against
d'avancer
terrorism.
ensemble. Nous avons défini
And we will continue to
J'aurai
talk
l'occasion de me
together.
rendre à Ramallah.
And I will go to Ramallah.
Et demain avec plusieurs dirigeants de la région.
And I will meet with some
Très concrètement avancés.
leaders of the region tomorrow
Thank you,
in
Mr.
Jordan.
Prime Minister, not just for your time, but because I'm lucid about the fact that this fight against terrorism is obviously a matter of existence for Israel, but it's a matter of existence for all of us. This is why we discussed together, and I just reminded this issue, but I consider that this is an international coalition in order to fight against these terrorist groups that we have to build. I just reminded my people in my language what we discussed about fight against terrorism, humanitarian action, rules to be respected, but as well political process. And obviously I warned against any escalation, and I want Hezbollah and some other regimes not to be part of what's happening. We had a very precise discussion, and I want to thank you for that. Now we will follow up this discussion in the coming hours in order to see what we can improve in the coming days, but I'm sure in the coming weeks and months. I know how committed you are. Let me express once again my solidarity, my friendship, and the fact that France stands with you in this awful terrorist act you had to experience. We are with your people.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Since you mentioned the regional aspects, let me say a word about that. There is a battle here between the axis of evil led by Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, their minions, who are fighting to bring back the Middle East, the world, to the early Middle Ages with that kind of barbarism, with bondage, with slaughter, with murder. And there's the axis of the free world and the moderates who want to bring the world to the progress and prosperity of the 21st century. This is the battle. It's engaged now. The test for the West and for civilization is Hamas. If Hamas emerges victorious, we will all lose. Europe will be endangered. Everyone will be endangered. Civilization will be endangered. So if Hamas wins, if Hamas loses and is defeated, then the forces of civilization win. That is why this battle is not merely our own. It's Europe's battle. It's America's battle. It's civilization's battle. It's the battle for the heart and soul and the future of the Middle East and the Arab world. I think many understand that, but there's no going around the fact that we must have a decisive victory against Hamas. If Hezbollah makes the mistake of joining this war in a significant way, it will regret it. They will long for the second Lebanon war, which they regretted. Because they're embedding themselves like Hamas in the civilian population in Lebanon, we will have to take action against them. And the devastation against Hezbollah will be unimaginable. So I hope they heed your warning, our warning, the warning of the United States not to do so. But if they will, they'll suffer horrible consequences. We have to join together and win. The forces of civilization, progress, have to win. That goes through the defeat of Hamas. I thank you, Emmanuel, for everything you said, and thank you for coming here, standing with us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
And you just heard the speech from French President Emmanuel Macron to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The translation was provided here in studio by former Israeli ambassador to France and Italy, Avi Pazner, sitting right next to me here. For everyone that's just joining now, good afternoon and welcome to I-24 News' ongoing coverage of Israel at war. I'm Ariel Levin-Waldman. Now, that speech you just saw was a discussion by French President Emmanuel Macron of what France's ultimate goals are in this conflict. Now, they're putting forth the need to free as many hostages as possible, given a number of French and generally many international citizens currently in the being held by the Hamas terror organization. And Emmanuel Macron stressed that the battle has to be against Hamas itself, while preserving as much civilian life in Gaza as possible, despite the atrocities committed by Hamas against Israeli civilian populations as well. Now, on the topic of the hostages, that number is now confirmed at least to be 220. It's coming as the terror group released another 2 hostages for the purpose of psychological warfare, an attempt to force Western powers to pressure Israel into delaying that ground operation into Gaza until it becomes no longer feasible. The 2 that were released, named as Yocheved Lifshitz, aged 85, and Nurit Cooper, aged 79. The release came after unconfirmed reports in Israeli media claim that efforts to secure the release of around 50 hostages with foreign citizenship broke down. Yocheved Lifshitz recently spoke about her ordeal, and it's necessary to understand that Hamas is still holding her husband hostage, that the testimony she's giving is in the context of a direct threat to her family's lives.
I've been through hell. We never thought we'll reach such a state. They went berserk in our kibbutz, put me on a motorcycle on the side and drove through the fields. They blew up the fence, the electronic fence that was built for $2.5 billion. It did not to no avail. Masses stormed our homes, hit people, they kidnapped many. They did not care about kidnapping elderly and children. It was extremely painful. They brought us to the entrance When I laid on the motorcycle, I was on the side. And on the way, they beat me. They didn't break my limbs, but it was extremely painful for me. They told us that they believe in the Quran and they will do us no harm and give us the same conditions that they have. We started walking through the tunnels with a wet ground with extreme humidity. We reached a big hall where some 25 kidnapped were concentrated. After 2 or 3 hours, they separated. From my kibbutz, 5 people and they put them in a separate room. Their guards were next to us with a paramedic and a doctor. We laid there on mattresses. They took care of the sanitary situation. A doctor came every 2 or 3 days to check on us.
And as we sit here, the families of British Israeli citizens that were kidnapped by Hamas are also giving their own address. Let's take a listen.
The news of civilians being kidnapped only started circulating around noon. So until noon, I didn't even imagine the possibility. I just thought that I've lost them. And all I wanted was my other brother and my friends and my friends' families out, because I figured this tragedy hit me. It's going to hit me really hard. I don't want anyone else to go through what I'm about to go through. Around noon, the news about the kidnapping started circulating, and then I started thinking maybe the pictures were proof of life. Maybe they were taking. I didn't even know what was the better option, being killed or being kidnapped by Hamas. So it was a waiting period until around 7 in the evening, when the army managed to get to my mom and my brother's house, and I got a phone call from their kibbutz telling me my mom and my brother were missing, and so was my older brother. I wasn't in touch with him all day because we never spoke during a missile attack or an event. We always spoke after. So I wasn't in touch with him. I was informed he was missing too. His phone was found in his house. The next day, 9 o'clock in the morning, I drove to the nearest police station to my house to file a formal missing persons report and to submit my DNA. And as I went into the police station, I received a phone call from my family's kibbutz that my oldest brother, Roy, who was 54, was found. His body was found at daylight. He was shot dead behind his house, murdered. So I filed a missing report for my mom and my brother. The mass casualties bodies are still being identified as we speak because of the numbers and because of the conditions of those who were murdered. 18 days later, my brother's body hasn't been identified officially just yet. I'm 46 years old. My life at the moment is worrying for my diabetic mom and brother who are being held by Hamas. My mother needs insulin shots. I don't know if she's getting them and how long she can survive without them. And then on the other hand, I'm chasing dental records and x-rays and filing forms asking me if my brother had scars or tattoos or which he didn't. So trying to identify my brother so we can bury him and bring him to rest, and then bringing my mom and my other brother home. So this has been my life for the last 18 days now. 18 days. I find it when I ask people what day is it, they say Monday or Tuesday, and I count by numbers. No, it's day 18. Our lives stopped on the 7th of October. I try not to deal with my loss of my brother at the moment because I find it too painful, and if I start thinking about that, then it will hurt too much and it'll break me, and I don't have the privilege of breaking because I have a mission and I need to be efficient and effective and productive, trying to get the Red Cross to our family members, to see them, to get lists of who's been taken. These are 18 days later. We haven't had any information. Are they getting the medications that they need? So we're chasing information. We're trying to get the hostages help, and we're trying to get information out. And we don't have that just yet. I'll show you the. This is my mom. She was supposed to be in London now on a holiday with my brother Nadav. They've had tickets booked, a hotel, shows. On Sunday, I had to cancel everything because they were in Gaza, and they're still there. This picture was taken on their last trip on the airport on the way to London because they came here often. This is my brother Nadav. He's 51. They're just simple people living on a small agriculture community. A kibbutz is the closest thing you can imagine to a village where everybody knows everyone. We all go to the same schools. I know people from the kibbutzes around us. It's that type of a community. We're farmers. My brother, who was murdered, worked in the dairy many years, like my dad did for 35 years. My dad passed away years ago. I worked in the dairy as a young teenager. This is the life we lived. It's a quiet, simple, peaceful life that's been shattered to pieces on October 7th. And all we did was work in the fields and milk the cows. And now my brother is dead. And my family is being held against their will in Gaza. And I'm here to raise awareness for my family, and for all families who have young children and Holocaust survivors and young women and men, elderly, in medical need. And I'm here to speak for my family and for and to be the voice for everyone who can't be here with us now. This is a humanitarian crisis. This is a crime, a war crime, and the hostages have to be released and returned. This isn't a political issue. This is a human crisis, and we demand the return of our loved ones home so we can start healing from this trauma. Thank you.
You're just hearing some of the harrowing tales from the families of some of the kidnapped victims of Hamas's October 7th rampage and massacre. Before we discuss this further, we're going to take a quick look at some of the developments on each front. On the southern front, the IDF did hit 400 Hamas targets in Gaza in the last 24 hours. The army said they've hit about 10,000 locations in Gaza since the beginning of the conflict. Most recent efforts focus on knocking out potential ambush sites and sniper positions in advance of a long-awaited ground offensive. The military says that readiness is high, and they decry political pressures preventing them from launching a decisive operation to destroy Hamas once and for all. And then, even during all this, during the night, Hamas was firing a steady barrage of rockets at Israel's southern border towns. While they've not fired on central Israel since Sunday, Israel has warned citizens, do not be lulled into a false sense of security, as analysts say the terrorists are saving the bulk of their arsenal in reserve. U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu spoke on the phone after the release of those two hostages from Gaza as part of Hamas's psychological warfare campaign in an attempt to delay the ground offensive. The IDF also released some images showing Hamas's fuel stockpiles as the group claims Gaza has no fuel for humanitarian purposes. Fuel is blockaded as Hamas steals all of it to use for their military projects. And on the northern front, the IDF destroyed Hezbollah terror infrastructure in some overnight strikes. And we are now going to go to discuss this more in studio, where we have Dr. David Shimoni, the part of the Commanders for Israel Security, a group of former high-ranking Israeli military officials, discussing all of the needs of the state of Israel in the coming hard times ahead of us. The big challenge we're looking at in front of our eyes right now is this hostage situation. Hamas releasing a slow trickle, a hostage here, a hostage there. Each time they do, it gets pressure from Western governments to delay a ground offensive. And that causes Israel's window to actually do a decisive ground operation. It's causing that window to close. Ultimately, how long does Israel have to act?
I think Israel can act whenever it wishes to act. We have time. I think the delay in the major ground assault into Gaza Strip enables Israel to do many things, to adjust battle plans according to what we know now. We know now that the Hamas knew a lot about our forces, about their displacement, and so things have to be adjusted. To accumulate the forces, I believe we have too many forces in the south. We know now that the Gaza Strip is already divided into two major areas, the north and the south. I believe that if an assault, a major assault, will take place, it will be more in the north. So maybe we don't need to keep so many troops there. Yes, behind your question, we're holding 350,000 troops, most of them reservists. They don't go to work. Their families are worried. Their wives have to take care of the kids. Speaking as an elder citizen, their grandparents are taking care of things for them. And this is a damage to the economy, to the society. People are getting tired and fatigued and waiting. And eventually something will have to happen, and I believe something will happen, yes.
But there's also a second challenge there, because we talk about these 350,000 reservists that were called up. If Israel goes into Gaza, that is very likely when Hezbollah in the north commits to the front, to the fight as well, which means that suddenly 350,000 soldiers isn't too many called up. We're going to need that on the northern front as well.
We need it on the northern front. The northern front is fully prepared. Lots of troops there, lots of defense, lots of attacking units there. I think if we have to fight on both fronts, Israel will win, will prevail. The IDF is very, very powerful, very strong. Soldiers, equipment, technology, intelligence, very, very powerful. But I think Israel will try to avoid two fronts at the same time. And therefore, another consideration to see what exactly is the threshold that will force Hezbollah to do something major, because they're active all the time. They're firing small rockets, small weapons, rockets at civilians, at military targets in the north. They're all the time active. But it's not what Hezbollah is prepared to do. They prepare to inflict much more damage in the north of the country and also in the center of the country. So I believe, first of all, as we know, the Israeli army spokesman has said that there have been already some incursions of Israeli units into Gaza, mostly to do two things, he said, to recover remains of people who were killed and who are inside the Gaza Strip, and to improve our opening conditions for a big ground assault. So yes, you're right. I think we should try to avoid conflict in the north. I think that's one of the reasons why the Americans are intervening to try to deter Hezbollah, maybe also us, of doing things that might be very, very costly to Israel.
Now, we know that Hezbollah has been training for 2 years, the same as Hamas was, to conduct an identical style of operation to the massacres we saw on October 7th. That means a conflict with Hezbollah can at best be delayed. It cannot be avoided in the long term. What are the favorable conditions for Israel to finally take Hezbollah out of the picture as well?
It's interesting because militarily, we are now ready. We are in a very, very good position to launch an attack on Hezbollah and to try to destroy as much as their capabilities, lacking one thing, one element, and that's surprise. So because of the recruitment of all the reservists and the Northern Front being prepared, we are prepared. But we lack the element of surprise. They know that we are prepared. They see us. They have drones watching us. They have intelligence. And so I believe, if possible, we should delay our action on our initiative in the north.
Now, we see the United States with its carrier groups in the region and a promise to have Israel's back should Iran and Hezbollah commit to a massive fight against Israel. That's right now. At a future date when Israel is forced to eventually confront Hezbollah, will that still be the case?
I believe so. I have faith in what the American president says. And the American president says, we will not leave you alone and we will not let you lose a battle. But I think he has a broader view, and he means much broader things than not being destroyed by Hezbollah or not being badly hit by Hezbollah. He wants to see something big happening in the Middle East. He wants the Palestinian issue to be addressed and solved. He's talking about, he said in his statement, he said he wants to ensure the citizens of Israel that America will stand by and enable us to remain a safe, Jewish, democratic state. And I think when he's talking about Jewish, he's talking about the two-state solution. And when he's talking about democratic, he will ask questions about the way our politics are shifting. And so I believe his commitment to our safety is fantastic. He means it. He will come to our military rescue should we need it. I don't think we'll need it against the Hezbollah. But should we need it, he will come to our aid. But his intentions are far more futuristic than the present crisis.
And as we're speaking right now, we're getting reports of air raid sirens going off in the Gaza border area as Hamas appears to be firing rockets once again at those communities in the south. We're going to be coming back to that as we get some more information coming in. I'm going to return to you, Dr. Shimoni, for a little bit more. One of the things we heard Macron say during his own speech is comparing the fight against Hamas to the fight against the Islamic State, something that ultimately involved an international coalition, something that Macron did bring up to crush the terror group's holdings, to crush their military abilities, and reduce them to more or less an ideology and little more. Is this rhetoric, or is there actually the potential to see an international coalition attempting to fight groups like Hamas and possibly Hezbollah here in the Middle East?
If the sentiment of dealing with Hamas as with ISIS will expand, and other countries, we see the huge support we're getting now from France, from the United Kingdom, from the United States, the Netherlands, Italy. Their leaders coming here at a time of war under risk. They're flying into Ben Gurion Airport and they're giving support statements. And I believe they mean it. That's another reason to rethink a major assault on the Gaza Strip, because there are other means to try to reduce Hamas and to destroy Hamas, which are economic, which are political. So I say, I believe It's not only rhetoric. I believe what people saw on October 7th signifies that the brutality, the cruelty of Hamas and their uninhibited actions against civilians will cause the world to unite against them and to try to dismantle this ability.
What do you see as being the trigger conditions for that sort of international effort?
I think the trigger was October 7th. I believe the world is shocked. I believe politicians in the world are shocked. I wouldn't want to go now into the broader questions of Islamic immigration into all those countries and the way they assess the threat of terrorist groups simmering inside or hatching inside their territories. It's also a factor. But I believe the trigger was October 7th. But what the world saw on October 7th is the trigger.
And we are going to bring in another voice here, that of Natalie Bloom, one of the survivors of the Nova Rave massacre. I-24 News had the chance to hear her personal story and some of the horrors she endured.
We came to the party a day earlier. There was another party nearby. When the whole thing started, we didn't understand what was happening. We heard the rocket interceptions in the air. We heard the bombings. I had an anxiety attack. We started to move towards our cars. The first group of people who left was killed. We started to hear gunshots. We left the party area towards the main road. We saw a line of cars. People told us that there is a terrorist infiltration. At that point, I started to run. I lost contact with my friends. Each one ran in a different direction. I got inside the car of two girls. We heard screaming. We started to drive to an agriculture field. We left the car and started to run again. I saw a police officer yelling at me, "Run fast." One of the girls who was with me in the car got shot in the back. When she fell down, she looked at us. We continued to run. I couldn't help her. I continued to run. We spent 5 hours in the field, and we didn't see any security forces. Then I saw a car. He stopped, and I was shaking. I thought to myself, I hope they're Jews. They yelled at me, "Get into the car." And we drove away. At one point, we had to choose whether to turn right or continue to drive straight through the field. Whoever turned right was shot. I love trance music. I started to go to rave parties during the past year. This is our place. I don't think I'll ever go to a party again. People say that if we stop partying, the terrorists will win. But I don't see myself dancing again. When I danced, people used to smile. They told me, "Don't stop dancing." But I don't think I'll ever dance again.
Across the Western world, a distressing show as massive pro-Hamas rallies in the major capitals of just about every Western country, from Europe to the United States to Canada as well, showing rampant radicalism spreading through those countries with genocidal rhetoric at many of these rallies that have hundreds of thousands of people popping up left and right. Governments that were previously so quick to clamp down on misinformation and hate speech when it ran against their governmental narratives, now largely hands off amidst these growing calls for terrorism and violence. And all of this including a veritable legion of young people who know very little about the conflict, but are happy to take the most extreme positions possible with incredible convictions. We take a quick look at one pro-Hamas rally in Canada first.
Hamas is not a terrorist group.
Oh, it isn't, ma'am.
First of all, Hamas is not a terrorist group. Everything that they do is justified.
Including what happened last week?
Every single thing they have done is justified. Even at some point, a Hamas fighter told one of the women, "Can I have a banana to eat?" He asked if he could eat a banana that was in her home. Does that sound like a fucking terrorist to you?
And just as much as there is the bad coming out of Canada, there is also a good side, as massive amounts of philanthropy have flowed into the Jewish state to support Israelis in this time. To discuss some of this dichotomy and what's going on, we have with us in studio Sarah Malley, Director General of GFC UIA in Canada in Israel. Thank you very much for being with us, Sarah.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, two sides. You handled the philanthropy from your organization, but your organization is stuck in a sort of milieu in Canada where you have what we just saw in the streets going on. How do we explain just what's going on in Canada and how you guys are effectively beating this narrative?
I think the Canadian Jewish community has, since the establishment of the Jewish state, been profoundly involved in Israel. It's a community that was founded on the Holocaust, and as such, the Holocaust stories that are coming out of Israel today, the pogroms that are coming, the stories of pogroms and carnage and barbarity that are coming out of Israel today, touch the hearts and souls and garner the imagination of the community, the Jewish community in Canada, and they've been mobilized towards the philanthropic effort to make a difference within Canada and with their philanthropy to Israel.
And at the same time, with these massive rallies, is there a very large pro-Palestinian population in Canada that's posing like a sort of counterweight to this?
There are strong voices. The Jewish community in Canada is working incessantly to ensure security of the Jewish community in Canada. The Jewish community in Canada is approximately 365,000 Jews. So it's a relatively small community in relation to the United States. And alongside calls for philanthropy and support with Israel, there's been calls to ensure the safety and security of the Jewish community across Canada.
What sort of operational things has the Jewish community been doing in Canada to really exactly guarantee that, the local security?
Well, even on the day, local Jewish community organizations do not normally put out statements on Shabbat or on Jewish festivals. That is a really rare practice. So just the dissemination of information, making sure people are safe, particularly on university campuses, but not only, that's the kind of stuff that the Jewish community has done in cooperation with the, obviously, the national bodies that are doing that kind of stuff as well. So, I'd like to focus on this $102 million that have come from the Canadian Jewish communities across Canada. It is, relative to the size of the community, such a profound statement of consistent Zionism, consistent support. The Jewish Federations of Canada, UIA, the organization that I head up in Israel, has not left the city of Sderot for 20 years. It is involved, it is engaged, it's on the ground, and together with our representatives here in Israel, we've been able to really respond to the desire to be connected to Israel at this time. So even though, as you describe, a kind of what feels like an oppressive culture across Canada, what you have is the vitality of the Jewish population in Canada, a purposefulness that we haven't seen for a long time, not only amongst the higher echelons of the community, the more well-established, but across the board. I heard of a young woman say the other day, she said, I was a quiet Jew. I've been a quiet Jew for many years. Young woman, late teens, but I can't be a quiet Jew anymore. This is about me. This is my story. I'm implicated in this, and we all need to stand up, speak up, and be present, both in the rallies, in the vigils, in the calling for the release of hostages, and also in our philanthropic efforts.
Absolutely. That reinvigoration, I think, is the key word here. And $102 million can do a lot of good and a lot of repairs. Do you have a breakdown of where this money is going and what causes its bolstering?
Well, what we're trying to do here in Israel with our team on the ground, we have representatives across Israel. In a strange turn of events, we have Vancouver and our coast-to-coast communities across Canada support and are involved in Etzbah HaGalil, the northernmost communities of Israel, such as Kiryat Shmona and Metula. We have Montreal Federation involved in Beersheba, and we have the Toronto Federation that's involved in Sderot and Eilat. So across the country, we're working to find out what the emergency needs are and then plan for medium and long-term care. This is going to be a long-term process of repair, rehabilitation, and trauma care. So our work is first to look at the emergency needs and then to work on the midterm and the future.
Yes, my last question is, from the Israeli side, what has the biggest demand been from you guys? What are the needs that they're saying are the most critical?
Well, I should say that every day, from hour to hour, those needs change. So there isn't a consistent answer to that. And anybody on the ground that's saying this is exactly what we need for the last week, that's not accurate. Kiryat Shmona was not evacuated, and then it was evacuated. The idea of respite and care for people that are the displaced people and the displaced populations of Israel, that is urgent. These people don't know how long they're going to live in hotels and away from their homes, and people don't have homes to go back to. So taking care of that population, ensuring there are frameworks for young kids, for teens that are on their phones largely and are kind of adults but not really, like really ensuring that those populations are cared for, particularly those that are lower socioeconomically. So we're there with our people on the ground to pay close attention to make sure that we see the gaps, and we're there right now to fulfill those needs.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I'm glad that people like you are out there keeping up the good work and ensuring that there are resources where they are necessary.
Thanks very much.
We're going to keep on the topic of philanthropic needs because in Israel it has become such a pressing concern. We have seen a demand from the health ministry for more and more mental health counselors, calling it a mental health mass casualty event. We have seen upwards of 200,000 people internally displaced in Israel that need help at every possible hour, people with no homes, without enough access to food. And to help us understand a little bit more about that, we are joined by Eliana Mandel-Branner, the director of the Kobi Mendel Foundation. Thank you, Eliana, for being with us. Ultimately, when we are seeing this massive need in Israeli society right now for additional assistance, additional help, what are the biggest pressing needs and how do you help supply those?
So, like you said right before me, there is a very, very big need for therapy. We are hiring therapists. We have volunteer therapists. Right now, we are calling each and every one of our families and trying to understand their need of the current bereaved families, not the newly bereaved. That is a different need, but just for the citizens of Israel who haven't gone through the attack but are living through a war right now. There is a very, very strong need of therapy and of therapists and to help go through this together. Really, people want to talk about it and want to make sure that the trauma isn't continued trauma and it stays in the now.
And when we're talking about these needs, you've had a lot of experience with your agency dealing with the aftermath of this sort of horror and nightmare. There's a hard question for a lot of people right now, and it's for parents talking to their children to help them understand what's going on. How do you explain to children that have seen this sort of nightmare that their parents can't always protect them from the monsters? How do you explain to people around there that sometimes the monsters win? What do you tell them they can do?
So for parents, I always say the thing that we have to do is be honest. We need to talk to our children when we are calm and collected, not when we are emotional, but be honest. Tell them what's happening, because if we don't tell them, they'll hear it from their friends. They'll hear it from conversations we have with our friends. Children know what's going on. And if we are honest with them and we say to them, this is what's happening. There is a war going on. We are doing everything we can to protect you. There are soldiers, our army is protecting us. The police is protecting us. And for those who believe Hashem is protecting us, that's the main thing to say. Another thing is to make sure to keep telling our kids how much we love them and how much we are here for them. And if they ever want to talk or if they have anything they want to tell us, any needs that they need met, that they should come to us and tell us and share with us and just keep the lines of communication open. That's the most important thing that we can do for our children.
And the follow-up is, it's not just the children, but also so many adults who have had a sort of innocence shattered by this and are having to confront the fact that there is a great deal of evil in the world surrounding them, and that the psychological change has to be, how do you not be broken by evil, but instead become ready to confront and to fight evil? Because that's a big question as an entire society we're asking these days.
So I can tell you about myself. I live in the community of Tekoa. We are surrounded by Palestinians. My husband is in the reserve duty right now on Otef Aza. And it's very, very scary. We are very scared. I have my children sleeping in the room with me so that if I need to run to the miklat or if something happens, they are right there with me. And I've confronted these questions myself, and my friends and my community have all confronted this question of, we have faced evil in a way that we've never seen before. My brother Kobe and his friend Yosef Ishran were murdered right outside our home 22 years ago, and they were brutally stoned, but they were stoned to death by Palestinian terrorists. And we thought that their murder was the most terrible thing that could ever happen because of the way they were murdered. And now with what's happening in Israel, with a massacre that over 1,400 people were murdered in such a brutal way, dealing with that and knowing that what we thought was a one-time thing is now so huge, and the need to deal with it is so huge. And it's just what I do and what me and my community do, and what we tell our families is that we know that there is a bigger picture here, and it is our job as the Jewish nation to spread light among the world, and to do as much good in our communities and for us at the Kobe Mandel Foundation, for our families and for the newly bereaved families. And there is evil in this world, and there is no discounting that. And it's our job to counter that that evil, and do good and bring light and laughter, and keep on living. And it's so hard to say that when we see these images, but that is our job. At the Kobe Mandel Foundation, that is our job at the Jewish nation, to keep being resilient, to keep standing strong, never to forget the people who are lost, but to keep on living.
That's a good message that the people of Israel, and I guess the people of the world as a whole, need to hear here. Eliana, thank you very much for those words and for being on our show with us. We're going to return now to the studio where we have Dr. David Shimoni with us to help us understand once more the security situation. We've been hearing a lot about the hostages, about the victims, and I want to turn our eye to the South, where so much of this nightmarish horror took place. And the big question I think that's hovering over everyone's mind is, after seeing that, these images that are effectively seared into the very soul of the Jewish people for all time going forward, how do we rebuild? How do we go forward and reclaim Israel South as part of Israel? It's not just a site for nightmare and massacre.
I think that should be the future of Israel in the next decade, to rebuild the South. Yes, the trauma is fantastic, big, enormous. People that evacuated their kibbutzim and farms say they're not sure that they'll get back. And I think the big mission of a government in Israel is to rebuild the South, to resettle the South, to create the not only the military but also the political conditions for us to live in peace in the South. Should be a major effort to rebuild the South. A lot of money invested there. I think the South should be a place where children, school children, will go annually to visit the place, to learn about what happened, to learn about the mishaps, about the mistakes that led to this terrible massacre, and to make this a national project of rebuilding the South again.
But to do that, Israel also needs to reestablish deterrence and to send a message not just to Hamas and the Palestinians, but also to their backers. Ultimately, when we're talking about the military strategy, how is Israel going to also make a message clear to everyone around? Do not try anything like this again.
I think we have an experience of trying over a few decades. Something happens, we retaliate. It's a big blow to our enemies, and they learn a lesson. But eventually, they creep up again, and they rebuild themselves and re-equip. And we're in a new round of violence. I think I said here before, the reason that a state has an army is to avoid war, is to prevent war. So yes, we have a formidable army. It's big and strong, but eventually it has to serve us to make peace.
And to do that, because we always use in these regional conflicts and these military operations in the course of the past decade, the words, we dealt a strong blow, we hit them hard, we have established deterrence. But what we learned is that a strong blow isn't deterrence. We actually have to break the enemy.
You have to break the enemy by any means. It could be militarily, it could be financially, it could be politically, could be by boycotting them, by dismantling their abilities, by cutting the money from flowing into Hamas or to any other terror organization. But yes, definitely a strong arm, a strong reaction, military reaction is necessary as a deterrent.
What do we say about American concerns that Israel isn't actually ready for the military operation in Gaza?
I think, first of all, the appearance of military forces, American military forces in the region, testify that they have their questions or their doubts. It's quite embarrassing even that we are now aware that American generals are advising IDF generals, which is quite a new thing for us. I think Israel is prepared. I think Israel knows what to do, has the means to do it. I believe the army is well trained and well equipped. I believe Israel is now adjusting its plans according to changes. New intelligence has to come in. Where are the people positioned? Where are the hostages positioned? Abilities that Hamas lost. But I think the American concern is a bit exaggerated about our military ability to overcome a conflict in both fronts.
Absolutely, because what you described there with the Americans advising the IDF for regional conflict seems to be a reverse of the conventional wisdom. Ultimately, how does Israel once again reclaim not just its image, but its actual ability?
I think Israel has to regroup itself. We're talking about arguments within the government, within the cabinet, within the military. I think after this war is over, Israel should ask itself many, many questions about its social stability, about its strength as a society. Has to make many, many adjustments and improvements. We spoke earlier about the Canadian Jews. I think Jews from all over the world should be invited to participate in this discussion, to convey their sentiments towards Israel and the big questions that Israel still did not answer. What does it mean to be a Jew? What does it mean to be democratic? What are our borders? Major, major questions that the society has not agreed upon yet.
Absolutely. It's going to be more than just that, because it's going to be about reforming a compact with the people of the nation about what it means to be a nation as a whole. These are very big questions that are going to be hovering over all of us moving forward. David, thank you.
It brings me back, if I have another second, to the question of the hostages. I think this will demonstrate our ability to maintain the ethos of a state that takes care of its citizens and soldiers and never abandons them with the enemy.
That's going to be the pressing question of how to do that and how to actually win a war at the same time. David, thank you so much for helping us understand many of these strategic and political concerns that are cracking our society as we speak. And we're going to be right back in a few minutes after a short break with more coverage and more aspects and angles to this war and all its possible ramifications.
Over 1,300 people murdered and more than 3,000 injured, and the war with Hamas continues. we bring you first-hand testimonies from the front lines, from those who survived, and all the records of the atrocities by Hamas. Follow us as Israel fights terror from the south and north. Get the inside scoop on what's going on. Only on I-24 News.
It actually starts from scratch. And the way that it works is it generates this random body that kind of looks like a sponge, and it evaluates its behavior.
Frases que sabes desde dónde vienen.
Ven acá, ¿y el paquetico para cuándo?
Y recargas que ya sabes hacia dónde van. Envía recargas internacionales Altis a tu gente en RD. Accede a nuestra página web recargas.altis.com.bo. Selecciona recargas y digita el número al que deseas colocarle la recarga. Además, ellos reciben el doble de balance en recargas de $8 o más.
Altis, la red global de los dominicanos.
Welcome back to our ongoing coverage of Israel at war. French Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron is in Israel, and he just gave a statement with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as earlier meeting with President Herzog. The main topics of both meetings was, of course, the hostage situation facing the international community.
Today, the international community is uniting in support of Israel. For Hamas barbarism not only threatens the Jews, it threatens the Middle East, it threatens the region, it threatens Europe, it threatens the world. Hamas is the test case of civilization against barbarism.
Le Hamas est un groupe terroriste.
Hamas is a terrorist group
et la destruction de l'État d'Israël.
That aims to destroy Israel.
Daesh, d'Al-Qaïda, de ceux qui leur sont
Hamas is like Daesh and Al-Qaïda.
Et dans l'intention.
They operate in the same way. We are ready that the international coalition against Daesh in Syria and Iraq will also fight against Hamas.
Internationaux, je l'ai évoqué avec vous ce matin, que nous puissions bâtir une coalition régionale et internationale.
We want to build a coalition regional, international, to fight terrorism.
Je pense que c'est l'intérêt d'Israël, de sa sécurité.
It's in Israel's interest.
Menacés par ces mêmes groupes.
And we are also threatened by these groups.
And first, a quick look at the southern front, where mere moments ago, air raid sirens went off in Beersheba as it came under rocket fire from Hamas. The IDF, over the course of the past 24 hours, has hit about 400 Hamas targets in Gaza. The army said they've hit about 10,000 total since the beginning of the war. The most recent efforts are focusing on knocking out potential ambush sites and sniper positions in advance of a long-awaited ground offensive. The military says that readiness is high, and they are decrying political pressures that are preventing them from launching a decisive operation to destroy Hamas once and for all. During the night, Hamas also fired a steady barrage of rockets at Israel's southern border towns that has continued even throughout the morning and into the afternoon. While they've not fired on central Israel since Sunday, Israel has warned citizens not to be lulled into a false sense of security. As analysts warn, the terrorists are only saving the bulk of their arsenal in reserve. U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu spoke on the phone after the release of 2 additional hostages from Gaza, part of Hamas's psychological warfare campaign to delay the ground offensive. The IDF also released some images showing some of Hamas's fuel stockpiles, as the group is trying to claim that Gaza has no fuel for humanitarian purposes. Fuel is a blockaded item, as Hamas steals all of it to use for their military projects. On the northern front, the IDF destroyed Hezbollah terror infrastructure in overnight strikes as well. And we are now going to turn our eye directly to the north, where our correspondent Hamda Salhu is standing by to give us the most recent updates on that front. Hamda?
Well, look, renewed shelling happening across the Israeli-Lebanon border. About 3 booms heard just moments ago. The Israeli military has said that they've been preemptively striking Hezbollah cells that are looking to carry out anti-tank attacks on Israeli territory. The military also saying that overnight they did strike several other cells. Yesterday, a drone from Lebanon infiltrating Israeli airspace, causing sirens in Kiryat Shmona, a town that has already been evacuated. The Israeli military has declared a lot of these communities within 5 kilometers of the Lebanese border a military zone. And on the other side of the border in Lebanese territory, it is the same type of situation. The 100-kilometer border has been evacuated. Some 20,000 residents have fled north to central parts of the country. In places like Beirut, in places like Tira, schools have been converted into bomb shelters, but the Lebanese government is saying that they simply don't have the means to handle the influx of people that have been coming into the country. Now, back here in Israel, the military is saying they are prepared for a larger confrontation should that happen, though the Americans have been privately and publicly telling the Israelis not to have a larger preemptive attack against Hezbollah in fears of a more semi-regional conflict breaking out and making it a full-scale war here on the northern border.
Just north of that border, does Arabic media give us any indication of what sort of plans we've heard from Hezbollah and what sort of pressures they're under right now?
Look, there are no visuals really of what is happening in terms of military preparation by Hezbollah. Arabic media on the other side of the border is simply reporting what is happening when there is retaliation from the Israelis. They're reporting from the sites of the fire. But as to what Hezbollah is saying, there has been quite the silence from them. They have said that 32 combatants have been killed. Last week, a Hezbollah spokesperson said that the tit-for-tat exchanges were simply a warning to Israel and not an indication that they were joining the fight. So a lot has been left unsaid, and there's a lot still left to be seen on whether this will open up into a full-scale war.
Thank you very much, Hamda, for that report from the front, and we'll be coming back to you over the course of the day as the situation there develops. Before anything else, though, we are joined in studio by Benjamin Anthony. He is the CEO of the Miriam Institute, an advisor to the Biden administration, as well as a combat veteran of almost every major Israeli military action since the Second Lebanon War. Benjamin, it's good to have you in studio. You have that experience, the Second Lebanon War. I want you to give us your own appraisal of what's going on the northern front as well.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for having me. A quick correction. I held an advisory position to the Trump administration, not to the Biden administration. And with regard to my own experience inside Lebanon during the Second Lebanon War, I feel as a consequence of that, and I think that it's very important that we speak to this, there is too much leeway and too much silence being applied to the complete failure of the defense establishment that has resulted in the most horrific attack upon the Jewish people inside the Jewish state since the events of the Holocaust. I want to explain what I mean by that. Firstly, with regard to Hezbollah in the north, as we just heard from your reporter there, it is absolutely essential that the Israel Defense Forces launches a first strike against their aerial munitions. I remind everybody, they have the ability to launch up to 2,200 munitions against us that can blanket the entirety of the state of Israel. It is absurd that we are playing this tit for tat with Hezbollah. This is a terror organization that has the abilities that would make everything that Hamas did to us, which was horrific, look like child's play. We have to defang Hezbollah right now, not the day after. The other thing, yes, please.
Well, I think many people were looking at that, and I think everybody agrees that Hezbollah needs to be broken eventually. The question is, when Israeli attention is divided between the north and the south, is that the best time?
This is absolutely the best time to strike Hezbollah's aerial capabilities. Now, we've missed the opportunity for a true preemptive strike. We've lost the element of surprise. But the Second Lebanon War broke out because the shared language between Hezbollah and the Israel Defense Forces resulted in a series of misunderstandings. Right now we're at a point where there seems to be an understanding that military and terror infrastructure, military in the sense of Israel, terror infrastructure in the sense of Hezbollah, those can be targeted like for like. But one miscalculation, one misunderstanding, and Hezbollah will launch towards us. Also, after the Israeli people have suffered so greatly as a consequence of the murderous rampage of Hamas, it is improper and wrong that all of us should carry this concern about whether or not Hezbollah will begin to rain hellfire down upon our citizens and our citizenry. We have a duty and a responsibility to use this as a pretext to rid our borders of these massive, massive threats. I also want to tell you that too many people are saying, leave the generals in situ who are in situ today. Let them prosecute this war and investigate afterwards. Nonsense. There are individuals who must be removed from their roles in command right now. I'm referring to the commander of the Southern Front. He absolutely, Finkelman needs to go. Aaron Khaliba needs to go immediately. Some people say you don't change horses mid-race. This is not a horse race, but I can give you a different metaphor. When a horse is lame, it's put out to retirement, and it's time to get rid of these generals and bring in people who actually want to fight this fight and have the confidence of the troops, the mid-career officers, the simple soldiers who they lead, because I will tell you, it's from their ranks, the simple soldiers, the low-ranking officers, the mid-career officers, that the stories of heroism and salvation will come. Not from these generals. They have failed. It needs to be spoken about now, not later by way of a commission.
This is a call for some bold actions in multiple theaters. We have right now the United States promising their backing in the form of 2 aircraft carriers, but demanding Israel not preempt in any way on the northern front. Do we gain a better advantage from having the United States and its aircraft carriers at our back, or from taking that first strike?
In my mind, unquestionably from taking that first strike, and that's why I think it's important that I speak to this now, and I think it's important that people understand it now.
Jump in, because we're getting reports right now that there are sirens going off, air raid sirens in Ashdod, as Hamas is firing more rockets towards Israel's southern communities. We're going to update that depending on what the results of that end up being.
So right now we have to make that first strike. We get a greater advantage, the state of Israel, when we take our destiny in our own hands. We cannot outsource that even to a great friend such as the United States of America. And let's remember something. The United States is our most important ally, but its primary concern is for itself, rightly so. Israel should emulate that, be primarily concerned with our security and what we're able to do to secure our citizens and our civilians. And that absolutely requires a first strike on Hezbollah's airborne munitions capabilities right now. In fact, I would make the argument that that ought to be prioritized by the defense establishment, even over and above an imminent ground incursion in the event that that's going to take place. First, let's get rid of that potent, dangerous enemy to the north, and then let's act with greater ability and more military impunity down in the south, inside the Gaza Strip. We cannot leave the situation as it is.
It's about 150,000 missiles that Hezbollah has pointed at Israeli cities, enough to level cities, as you've described. The question is, if Israel takes that first strike, how much of that capacity can realistically be knocked out before the counterattack comes?
A significant amount. We've heard the demonstrative language of the defense establishment, particularly the Israeli Air Force, time and time again, expressing that what we visited upon Hezbollah from the air during Lebanon 2, the war in which I served, will look like nothing compared to what we're able to do now. People have said in the Israeli defense establishment, we stand primed in the event of an attack from Hezbollah to bomb Lebanon, not Hezbollah, but Lebanon, back into the Stone Age. Either we mean that we have the capabilities of reducing down to their lowest number the amount of munitions that they can launch towards us, or we do not mean it. I think it's time to show that we mean it. I think it's very important. And I can tell you, over too many years, we come to this war divided. We come to this war as a divided society as a result of the tremendous rift that was sown around the issue of judicial reform. Now, there's a sense of unity at the moment. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to last very long. But for as long as it lasts, I want you to understand something. We have a challenge. We have to show our civilians, we have to show our soldiers that we know how to bring security back to our borders. And there is entirely too much groupthink atop the tree of the defense establishment here. I've spent a lot of time with generals, both here and in the United States of America. Too many of them think the same, they learn the same, they study the same, and they make the same flawed presumptions. The true fighters, those who truly want to take the fight towards our enemies, get proverbially kneecapped during the course of their career. It's time to bring some of those into the fray, let them lead. And we've seen examples of this in the past. It happened during the Yom Kippur War. Shmuel Gonen down on the southern flank was replaced by Chaim Bar-Lev because he didn't function. We need to replace the commander of the Southern Command. We need to replace Khaliba right now, and there are others as well.
You're touching on a critical issue that we've seen brought up over the past 2 weeks, and that is Israel's military readiness. We hear reports that soldiers don't have basic equipment, no tactical vests to carry their grenades and their magazines. They don't have enough uniforms sewn for the reserves call up. There was the obvious intelligence failure. Ultimately, how do you repair this readiness factor? We have the United States breathing down our neck saying you're not even ready to go into Gaza right now. This is just a monumental failure and a bad look for Israel. How do we fix all of this and actually do what you're describing?
It's a terrible failure for the state of Israel. Unfortunately, it's not surprising to me at all, not at all. And I will tell you something from my own personal experience. In 2016, I was called in to advise the then Trump campaign about alternatives to the two-state solution, which I did. In 2017, I took personally, along with my companion in our organization, Rosita Panini, my colleague and co-founder, I took a group of generals from the Israel Defense Forces, retired generals, up to advise the negotiating team of the Trump administration on what to do with regard to the Gaza Strip. Not one of those generals supported my predicate for this idea, which was that there needed to be a military activity that toppled and destroyed Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. All of them were deterred. All of the generals were deterred by Hamas. None of them wanted to operate against Hamas. None of them believed in the IDF's ability to operate and to destroy Hamas. There was only one who did. His name was Brigadier General Shmuel Tzucker, so an old-timer, a true hero of the state of Israel. But the rest of them, the more modern generals, not only are Hamas not deterred, but it became clear to me we have been deterred by them. So am I surprised we're unready to topple Hamas? Sadly, no, I'm not. But that is why I'm doing the unpopular. I am calling out names and saying we must strike the north now and we must get rid of these incompetent generals now.
It's definitely a scary path forward that underlies just how much of a failure it was. Benjamin, we're going to come back to you in a little bit, but first we want to address the other challenge facing Israel in this military confrontation. That is, of course, the hostage situation that Israel is under. The number of hostages now confirmed, at least 220, coming as the terror group releases another 2 of them for the purpose of psychological warfare, an attempt to force Western powers to pressure Israel into delaying a ground operation into Gaza until it becomes no longer feasible. The 2 that we just released, named as Yocheved Lifshitz, age 85, and Nurit Cooper, age 79, released coming after unconfirmed reports in Israeli media claim that efforts to secure the release of 50 hostages with foreign citizenship ended up breaking down. Yocheved Lifshitz recently spoke about her ordeal, but before we play that, it's necessary to understand Hamas still holds her husband hostage. The testimony she is giving is happening in the context of a direct threat to the life of her family.
I've been through hell. We never thought we'll reach such a state. They went berserk in our kibbutz, put me on a motorcycle on the side and drove through the fields. They blew up the fence, the electronic fence that was built for $2.5 billion. It did not to no avail. Masses stormed our homes, hit people, they kidnapped many. They did not care about kidnapping elderly and children. It was extremely painful. They brought us to the entrance. When I laid on the motorcycle, I was on the side. And on the way, they beat me. They didn't break my limbs, but it was extremely painful for me. They told us that they believe in the Quran and they will do us no harm and give us the same conditions that they have. We started walking through the tunnels with a wet ground with extreme humidity. We reached a big hall where some 25 kidnapped were concentrated. After 2 or 3 hours, they separated from my kibbutz, 5 people, and they put them in a separate room. Their guards were next to us with a paramedic and a doctor. We laid there on mattresses. They took care of the sanitary situation. A doctor came every 2 or 3 days to check on us.
And we have been discussing most of the show, the how of how Israel is going to fight this war. But we do have to once again touch on the why, the horrible brutality that we saw at the border, those massacres. And it's best to hear it in the words of survivors themselves. Joining us now is Almog Adrad, a survivor of the assault on the Nova Music Festival. Almog, I'm glad you could be with us. I don't have words of consolation because there are none that apply to what you have seen. The best I can ask that you do is you tell your story as best that you're able to.
Okay, thank you so much that you want to share my story and all of the people in the party. So at first, this around 6:30 in the morning, after we hang out and party and dance, we start to hear the rockets and the above us in the sky, and all of the sky start to get smoky and the alarm start. The party was shut down and all of the participants start to getting the stuff and try to exit. Me and my friend are wait a little bit so we could don't get blocked on the way out, because there was a lot of cars that tried to exit. So we wait a bit, but then after 1 hour after that, we start to hear like shooting, and we understand that the situation is very bad. So we start to go to the exit and try to drive with the car, but they blocked all the exits and all of the car didn't move, and we were stuck there. We start to hear like the shooting getting very close to us, and all around us, like the shooting coming from all around, and we couldn't decide where to go. So I exit the car and start to escape, and also my friends does. And then they started shooting on the car, and we saw a lot of people running toward us and start to running, and we understand that they get into the car. We started running in the nature and try to find somewhere to escape, but there was all around, and they come from all around. Well, we run a little bit, but we understand that we have no chance and just to hide. So we enter a big bush that we saw there in some downwell hole, and we stay there without moving around 8 hours. When we were in the bush, we didn't move at all, because all of the time there was like they were running near to the bush, and we heard all of the interaction outside. So we didn't move, and we wait, and just waiting. And we just heard war going outside. And after 8 hours, there was we heard Hebrew, and we understand that there was soldiers. So we screamed to him, like, help us. And they come in and rescue us. And then they come back to keep fighting, and we start to like walk on near to the cows, and we saw a lot of damage and chaos. But then there was some person from the kibbutz nearby that's just come and pick some survivor, and then we managed to escape.
Almog, in the 2.5 weeks since that nightmare, who's been there for you to help you? Who do you turn to for strength at this time?
I'm here now with friends that been with me in the bush, and that's the friends that also I came with him to the party. We hang out a lot of time since then, and we help each other. Also, my parents and other friends help me get through this area.
Almog, after seeing all of this, after enduring all of this, do you have a message for the people of Israel as a whole who are in shock, in horror, in fear right now? Who we are, what we do going forward?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
What's your message to the Israeli people right now after all of this?
Stay strong. I'm proud for all the Israelis right now, because when the situation was very tough there, and after a few hours, I saw a lot of Israeli people come and help, and like give themselves and go fighting and go help each other and contribute like food for us for those who are hurt, and just keep doing that because it's very helpful.
Almog, I'm glad you could share your story with us. Our message to you is to stay strong as well. All of the people of Israel are united right now, and we have your back in the days ahead. Almog, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to return to the studio where Benjamin Anthony is still with us. One of the biggest challenges for many of the civilians here in Israel is seeing what happened completely unopposed with no military in the south. And we're wondering how this could have happened.
It's absolutely appalling. By the way, we can win this war. We need to get rid of those generals who are dead weight. We need to rely on what Almog was referring to, the strength of the Israeli people, the low-level, the mid-career officers. Will see great heroism from there. In terms of what took place there on the south, look, when I was in the Israel Defense Forces, we would take responsibility for a given area. But that responsibility was then distilled down to the communities themselves. They always had a kitat konanut, a class of military readiness, defensive readiness there, on call at all times. There was also a Ravshatz, an individual responsible for overseeing the security of the given areas, and they would coordinate with the Israel Defense Forces. I remember in 2016 going down to Nachal Oz to have a presentation by Amir Tibon, who's been in the headlines recently because of the heroism of his father, Noam Tibon, someone that I brought to the United States to lecture, who's the former commander of the Northern Formation here in the Israel Defense Forces. In 2016, there were soldiers there inside Nachal Oz. Now, all of that has been reduced. Too much emphasis placed on static defense. It doesn't work. We need to return security to the south. But first, we have to destroy Hamas. And before we do that, in my opinion, hit Lebanon in the north, hit Hezbollah's capabilities, and reduce that down to its lowest form.
Absolutely. And that's going to be major topics of discussion in the days and the months ahead. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for explaining all the different angles there. For everyone else, though, we're about to go on a short break. When we come back, we're going to be continuing our coverage of Israel at war and continuing our discussion of every possible aspect of the road ahead, militarily, socially, and so many others. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Israel is officially in a state of war.
This is a very active scene, and we need to get in the car as we're talking.
More than 100 soldiers and civilians have been kidnapped.
Help us, we don't know what to do. We just don't know anything.
Entire families, including babies and children and elderly, were butchered in their beds.
Awaken the giant, and we are ready and we are strong.
Everyone is showing up. This is the unity.
Thanks for staying with us. We're going to turn our eye now to the southern border, where our correspondent P.S. Deckelbach is standing by live to help us understand what the most recent developments on the southern front are.
Right, Elroy, well, sporadic rocket fire coming out of Gaza this morning. I'm standing here in the city of Sderot that has been widely evacuating, a city of 30,000 residents. Only about 10% of the inhabitants have remained so far. And this really has become a city for journalists. There are many people who are coming here to see what the situation looked like. Also, one of the scenes of that heinous massacre from 2 weeks ago. And also people coming from really all across the world to show their solidarity. Such as one delegation having arrived from the United States only yesterday, delegation of 27 leading American rabbis. And I'm talking to one of them here, David Eliezer. How are you describing this trip here? You only arrived yesterday, but you know Israel well, you know Sderot well. What are your goals coming here?
Our goals are simple. We're bringing a message from diaspora Jewry that we're standing 1,000% behind Israel. Israel is facing a terrible crisis. The evil of Hamas, the charter of Hamas calls for the destruction of the state of Israel and the genocide of every Jew in the world. And that includes the Jews of America. And we're here to say to Israel, we stand behind you unequivocally, and we are going to be behind you 1,000%.
You're here in Sderot right now, but I've heard from you before that you also visited other locations. Did you have the chance to speak to people here on the ground?
It's been a very deeply emotional experience. Yesterday we sat with all the families who are in mourning for the town of Kfar Aza, which was at a very interesting moment, because here we had from one of the most secular kibbutzim in Israel, and here a group of rabbis, Orthodox rabbis, came from America, and we sat and we cried together, and we listened to their stories and the pain, and we told them their pain was our pain. It was a sense of connection of one Jew to another in a moment of tragic history, which tells all of us about how united we are really when it gets to the very essence of who we are as a people.
It's interesting because I know that you told me before that you're currently staying in Jerusalem in a hotel that also hosts many of the evacuees from the border communities here. What are you hearing when you talk to them, telling them that you've just come from visiting these communities, where they are from?
Well, first thing, the rabbis are sitting around the tables and talking to them. We're going to organize some youth programs. We have rabbis here that speak Hebrew and understand how to work with youth. And their biggest problem is the demoralization of the youth. And we're going to do on the job right away. We're going to go to work to try to raise the spirits of these young people. And when they understand that people came from America because they share their pain and they're standing together with them, I think that's going to give them encouragement and inspiration.
What would you say, what is the sentiment like among the American Jewish diaspora community? What do you hear from back home from the United States? What have people been telling you when you told them that you're coming here these days?
First, they were a little bit, are you crazy a little bit? But the fact is, first thing, let me answer your question in two parts. Number one, I'm saying a rare moment of unity from across the board, the most liberal end of the community to the most traditional. They are standing side by side, standing together for Israel. Number two, I think us coming here has a very powerful message to American Jewry. If the rabbi of my community can come to Israel and be there at that time, that means Israel is important and I need to support Israel. So as much as we're coming here to tell the Israelis that, listen, we're standing behind you, we're telling American Jewry that, guess what, you can be proud as a Jew and you can stand behind Israel.
Thank you very much, Rabbi David Eliezer. Thank you very much. You're going to stay in Israel for a couple of more days. And that really is one of the examples here of what has been happening here specifically in the city of Sderot, which is one of the best examples where you can see what kind of consequences this war is taking here. A city of 30,000. It has become a ghost town. As you can see, many journalists behind me here who are coming specifically here to look at the situation that is still unfolding here on the ground. We had incoming rocket fire to other communities here close to the border this morning. Not in Sderot. In Sderot, the last red alert was triggered yesterday night, while the IDF has been continuously striking targets in the Gaza Strip also throughout the night. Ariel.
Thank you very much, Pia, for our understanding of what's going on at the border and the resiliency we're seeing from the Jewish community around the world. And Israel's Shin Bet Internal Security Service, as well as the police, have released footage from the interrogation of Hamas terrorists who were captured following their deadly rampage and massacre on October 7th. The footage clearly shows how the Hamas operatives were given explicit instructions to kill and to kidnap civilians, including the elderly, along with women and children. Middle East correspondent Ariel Oseran brings these horrific testimonies to light.
After the IDF shared with hundreds of foreign journalists body cam videos and pictures from Hamas's October 7th onslaught on southern Israel, the Shin Bet and Israeli police shared footage from interrogations of Hamas terrorists from Gaza who participated in the destruction and mass murder. In it, they describe in detail how they were ordered to kill and kidnap women and children.
مسؤول فصيل شاهد محمد المجدلاوي. وين ساكن؟ من صراحة. لأي منظمة أنت تابع؟ حماس. قولي شو المهمة كانت تبعتكم؟ خطف يعني. زي كذا. خطف وأسر من كفر عزة؟ لما أحكوا لكم يعني قتل وأسر منتو رايحين على مستوطنة فيها مدنيين، عارفين هذا الشيء. المهمة تبعتكم شو كانت بالضبط لما طلعتوا؟ السيطرة على موقع صوفا. السيطرة شو تعملوا؟ السيطرة مركز فين؟ شو تعملوا في اللي موجودين؟ هو تسيطر عليهم قتل يعني.
The detainees said in their investigations that they received orders to kidnap as many people as they could, specifically women and children, and to kill the rest.
لأنه في غزة اللي باخذ أسرى له مكافأة. قديش المكافأة قالوا لكم؟ شقة، منزل، بيت و$10,000. اللي بيجيب كل أسير باخذ شقة ومنزل؟ مين قال لكم إياها هاي؟ اللي كانوا يحكوها في القسام يعني. وشو عمل القسام يهبري؟ قتل. مين قتل؟ مدنيين.
دخلوا اثنين على البيت ضل في غرفة في الوجه مسكرة طخ على الباب صار في صوت جوا دخلوا كمان اثنين كان في واحد مرمي على الباب إذا هو ميت كان في دم جنبه طبعا كان في جوا زلمة مصاب ومتوقع انها عائلة كاملة
دخل اول دار وثاني دار كانت المرأة طخ حمزة على باب الدار
واللي المرأة لما شفتها يعني شو شفت عليها؟
شفتها انا مرمية بس ما قربتش منها يعني طلع الكلب تبعها بالشارع طخيته انا
شو عملت؟ طخين على الشبابيك والابواب ومين طخيت هناك؟ طخيت مرة كبيرة هي كانت قبالك ولا ايش فاهمني؟ تفاجأت فيها تخيل. شو عملتوا كمان في الدور؟ ولعنا دار دارين ولعنا.
سكروا الباب اللي جوا الغرفة المحصنة بعدين لفوا وصاروا طلع برا مدربة وبعدها صاروا يقولوا في يهود هان في يهود ايش وكان الشباك مسكر حديد صاروا يقولوا لهم افتحوا اطلعوا افتحوا ما رضيوش كانوا خايفين جابوا عقدة مسطرة حطوها على الشباك وفجروا الشباك فتح نتفة صغيرة صار يولعوا اجى واحد صار يولع قطع قماش بداخلها يقول انه منخنقوا من الداخل
كان معهم اسلحة يدافعوا عن حالهم؟
لا ما اطلقوش نار بالنار.
With many around the world denying the atrocities that were committed against innocent Israeli civilians, Israeli interrogators asked the detainees what Islam has to say about what they did.
حسب الدين الإسلامي مش أنت إسلامي؟ الدين الإسلامي بيقول لك هيك تعال اقتل. لا خليني أفهم هذه التصرفات أنت ما بتشوفها يعني مش زي داعش هيك قتل المدنيين عشوائيا؟
صحيح. الدين منع يعني النبي قال لا تقتلوا امرأة لا تقتلوا طفلا لا تعقروا امرأة لا زي فاهم علي؟ الدين ما بيحث على التشويه والتنكيل
The arrested Hamas terrorists point a blaming finger at their leadership, who seeks refuge abroad, while Gaza is laid to rubble.
ليش القتل هذا كله؟ شو اللي صار؟
مضحوك علينا احنا منهم. مغرر فينا مضحوك علينا منهم.
من مين مضحوك عليكم؟
متابعين حماس. هم قاعدين في الدور وسايبيننا هنا وسوونا جوا.
يعني هيك بتفكر انت؟
هيك بفكر. أنا هم اللي في قطر ولا في تركيا وبيحكي باسم الأقصى والمسلمين وقاعد غادوا بعتنا هنا هيك هم غادوا هاي برضو أهالينا بغزة يعني قاعدين بنقصفوا.
واللي بتقول هدول دمروا غزة. في ايش دمروا غزة؟
في كل هاي انت شايف ضايل غزة لا ضايل غزة لا دمرت يعني غزة مين اللي دمرها؟ بإيديهم وبإيدينا دمرنا غزة.
And with us now in studio is Ariel Osran, our Middle East correspondent, to help us understand a little bit more about what we just saw. We saw the testimony. What exactly do we really make of it? What is the point that is really achieved by releasing this?
So first of all, Ariel, it's important to clarify that this was just a taste of the interrogations. There were 6 interrogations in this video file that were shared, and there are many others that have been released to the public. I think the goal is to fight the deniers, plain and simple. I mean, there's a movement abroad, outside of Israel, that is discrediting all the accounts that came from first responders, from survivors, from security forces who were there, who saw it with their own eyes. And also forensic examiners that can give the same information after the fact. And despite all this evidence that we have also at I-24 News have been trying to bring the voices that have been closest to the heart of the atrocities on October 7th, there are still those who don't believe it. And here you hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak, exactly what their objectives were. And you see that the similar answers are repeated by these different terrorists, that each of them say that their instructions were to kill women, children, elderly, to kidnap as many as possible. One of them even said that was the goal of this operation, to kidnap as many as possible, to use as bargaining chips to release as many of Hamas terror suspects and administrative detainees that are held in Israeli prisons. And so with this growing movement of atrocity deniers, I think that's what stands behind this decision by Shin Bet police. Also, the IDF released yesterday footage to try and give more tangible evidence to those reporting on this, what exactly happened.
Hamas live streamed their atrocities in HD. They were quite proud of what they were doing. It seemed strange that their supporters around the world would somehow try to deny this sort of insurmountable evidence in front of their own eyes.
I'm not going to be the one who defends the deniers and tries to explain their perspective. The fact is that these things happened. They themselves recorded it. It was fed, live streamed back into Gaza, and they themselves are admitting to it. So I think that to continue to deny what happened, that just is the biggest disrespect you can show to the victims. And I think it's not a matter of trying to present any symmetry or proportionality, which is a term that is being brought up a lot. There was a lot of suffering, atrocities committed in October 7th in Israel. There's a lot of hardship going on in Gaza with continuous Israeli strikes. I do not think one needs to try and equate between the two. Both are happening. And that's, I think, how this should be presented, that there is a lot of suffering on both sides, and by trying to negate or ignore the suffering on the other side, that doesn't help anyone moving forward in this conflict.
Ariel, something I noticed near the end of your report showing these testimonies is this statement by these Hamas murderers on the ground, this sort of wedge between them and their leadership, that they're sent out there to die, to get captured, while their leadership is eating kanafa over in Qatar somewhere. Is this something that was more or less added for the sake of the video, for some kind of psyop, or is this something that seems to be earnestly believed by many of the Hamas fighters, that there's a disconnect between their leaders and themselves?
Look, the reality on the ground is they're right. They're right by the fact that they were sent into Israel to die. Those who survived are imprisoned. They're going to stay in Israel for the foreseeable future. Most of them, for the rest of their lives, are going to stay in Israeli prisons. All the while, Hamas leadership, that is self-exiled, are enjoying a comfortable life, whether it's in Doha in Qatar, whether it's in Turkey, whether it's in Lebanon. They're safe, and they're just sending others to do the dirty work for them. That's why when the IDF says Hamas doesn't care how many civilian casualties they have, I think they're right, because the more civilian casualties, the more hardship there is in Gaza, the more of a claim Hamas leadership has to present itself as the resistance, as the protector of Gaza, the protectors of Gaza, even though they put Gaza in this situation. As the detained terrorist said, we destroyed Gaza with our own hands, the leadership and us. And so the criticism is in place. Whether it's genuine, I don't know. If they're talking like this, why didn't they think about it before they chose to go out? But life in a terror organization doesn't always give you freedom of decision. Regardless, the fact that they're saying it now could amount to lip service. I think it does serve Israel in its psychological warfare, trying to sow discord on the other side. But the fact of the matter is, the facts that were presented of the disconnect of Hamas leadership from the population on the ground, that is true, that is evident, and even Hamas leaders can't deny it.
And before we continue any discussion, I want to break in here to mention that air raid sirens have just gone off in the southern border community of Nahal Oz as Hamas fires rockets into the south once again. We're going to take a slightly different angle now, as we are joined by Professor Mohammed Botar, a senior researcher at the Institute for Israeli Thought and the Institute for National Security Studies. Thank you very much, Professor, for being with us. I want to bring in a new angle. We've been seeing since the beginning of this war calls from Hamas and other terror groups to tell much of the Arab-Israeli population inside Israel to rise up, to join the war, to create mobs like we saw back in 2021. Do you see this as a possibility? What would be the triggers for such an event?
Well, thank you for this great question. First of all, these calls should be denounced and condemned from the very beginning. And I was quite happy to see that all political leaders, Arab leaders in Israel, rejected these calls loudly, explicitly, without adding but or maybe or something like that. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It has committed a savage terrorist attack on Israeli national security, all the more so Israeli citizens. And by so far, you can see that the entire majority of the Arab citizens in Israel condemn this terrorist attack. They do not support the kidnap or the killing of innocent people. And to a great extent, Hamas, if it so perceived itself so far as a national religious movement that is, mandated to free the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip the way they see themselves, it has been proven now for everyone, including for the Arabs in the Arab countries, but in particular to the Arabs in Israel, that it is not more than a terrorist organization, actually a savage terrorist organization. Some people try to make comparison between the Hamas and ISIS. I'm sorry, I don't think that they are equal. Hamas is way worse than ISIS. First, because it is used to be argued, at least according to the way they put their arguments, a national religious movement. Or what we have seen from this savage attack is that they have nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with Islam. Actually, these testimonies that we just watched now is a great proof by these terrorist people that what they have committed has nothing to do. Actually, it's contrary to the basic principles of Islam. They have nothing to do with the Palestinian case. The outcome speaks of itself. Since they have taken control over the Gaza Strip, if I correctly remember, back in 2007, they have brought only a terrible life and disasters to the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. They did not serve the Palestinian case. Whatsoever they are doing is just killing innocent people, terrifying innocent people in Israel and actually in the West Bank. And I shall remind the audience as well that they have been jeopardizing even the national security of the Egyptian from the other side of the border, and that's why the Egyptians did not take any chance when it comes to its national security, and so Israel must not take any chance when it comes to its national security.
What sort of statements have we seen from the rest of the region when it comes down to Israel's war against Hamas itself? I mean, we've seen a lot of outflow of criticism against Israel because of the civilians in Gaza. But when it comes down to Hamas itself, as you've pointed out, they've caused problems for many other regional powers.
You're right about your feeling. We have heard a kind of soft condemnation of the terrorist attack. Most of them did not call it a terrorist attack, but I have to say that the Arab political leaders in Israel were way far courageous than the Arab leaders of the Arab countries, because they condemned these events. Most of them called it a terrorist or a attack against civilians. They did not pick and choose between the words. They were so clear about their message. To the contrary, when it comes to Arab leaders of Arab countries, all the more so Islamic countries, they spoke about the need to reach a solution, a peace in the Middle East, and the Palestinians have a right to have a state of their own, and they are against the killing of innocent people and, of course, the kidnapping of innocent people. But that's not enough. You have to be very clear-cut about your position. There is here and there's there. And I'm not talking about now about the lay people in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip. I'm talking about people who are doing evil and people who are doing justice. This attack is nothing but a terrorist organization, a terrorist attack. It's way more than a terrorist attack. I mean, we know that terrorism aims, at innocent people, but with this kind of savagery, it is a kind of adoption of the ISIS theory, enveloping it with some kind of nationalistic views, even with Sunni concepts of Islam, which has nothing to do with Sunni, by the way, but more with Wahhabi. And at the same time, their image is way bad. That's why nowadays they are trying to amend or to correct their image by releasing some kidnapped abductees for kind of some sort of humanitarian reasons, or releasing videos while they are feeding these abductees. Nothing will help. I mean, the world has watched this terrorist attack, this kind of savagery. In most cases, they filmed themselves, so no one needs to prove anything. Basically, they prove to the world who they are, what they are, and what they are aiming at. And so I agree with you that the Arab world and the Arab leaders must be more explicit about their position. The history will judge them if they won't do so.
One of the things you just brought up there is the issue of Wahhabism in this conflict, because it's important to bring up because so many people in the West and in the region had the belief that Saudi Arabia could be a mediating force in the conflict. With Wahhabism seeming at the center of it, that seems to be out the window. What about the other Abraham Accord nations as well? Could they possibly moderate? Could they potentially bring the hostages back? What role do all of these people have to play?
Well, it depends on what stage, but let me talk first about the hostages, about the abductees. I think that the Abrahamic Accords has to be leveraged at this stage of time. We did not sign these peace agreements only in order to visit each other as a matter of tourism. Of course, not only for economics, but also we share some common grounds of security, of understanding about our mutual interest in the Middle East, in the world, the connections of these Gulf countries with the Western world, in which Israel is part, etc., etc., etc. And therefore, they have to play an important role, particularly against Qatar. Now, we have to remember that although Qatar and the other the Gulf countries which signed the peace agreements with Israel, they don't share the same concept about the Middle East and about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but they have their own mutual interests, economic interests, trivial interests, geographic interests, border interests, and therefore they can play this game and put pressure on Qatar in order for Qatar to put pressure on Hamas. And we have seen that it worked with the release of the first two abductees. Now add to that Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, although originally it's a Wahhabi-based oriented. However, we know that Saudi Arabia has been transformed in the last recent years in 180% degree, because it is willing to come close to the West, it's willing to come close to America, it's willing to come close to Israel and to other Western countries for its own self-interest. I mean, it feels that the jeopardy of the nuclear aspirations of Iran. It's not willing to be alone in this fight against Iran, so it's willing to have peace agreement with Israel. It has economic interest with Israel and with the West, and therefore we have to take advantage of the fact that there has been, or there have been already, steps towards serious steps, substantial steps towards peace agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia in order to bring Saudi Arabia into play. And so far I know, and to the best of my knowledge, Saudi Arabia is already in there. It plays behind the scenes an important role, particularly about the abductees, and I hope that this efforts will end by releasing all the abductees, particularly the civilian ones, entirely with no conditions from the Hamas side.
And I guess, as many people in Israel are saying, this is inevitable, that this will lead to a ground confrontation in Gaza. When that happens, we've already seen statements from many other regional players, including Abraham Accord nations, that this is ultimately unacceptable. How is this going to change Israel's relations with these nations quickly?
Well,